Chapter 8:20. After letting them vent for a while, Wizard Tribulation said, "Do you two think this wizard can save the situation? You saw that kind of attack. Even if this wizard joined in, I'm afraid it wouldn't have helped. At the very least, it wouldn't have put us in such a difficult situation." Jong Ao shouted in a low voice, so many experts were defeated by a little brat. This is a great humiliation. As he spoke, he viciously slapped the chair under him, smashing it into fine powder. That little brat, I'll make him suffer a fate worse than death. Cao Guan also swore, his eyes spitting fire. After cursing a few times, his mood gradually calmed down. Cao Guan sighed, in the end, they're all in a state of disunity. If those forces could unite like me and Brother Zhong, why would they need to worry about not being able to take down Nine Heavens' Holy Land? Zhong Ao nodded. Today, when Shattering Mystical Palace and War Spirit Temple were fighting Yang Kai, most of the people who had joined them had simply watched the show, very few of them had actually helped. If those people had taken action, perhaps they would have been able to break through the Nine Peaks barrier today. Palace Master, Palace Master. Suddenly, a shout came from outside the tent and a Shattering Mystical Palace cultivator rushed in. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Zhong Ao was already unhappy, so seeing his subordinates act so rudely, he immediately shouted angrily. The cultivator panicked and quickly bowed. "Palace Master, a few people from small forces are preparing to leave." "Leave?" Zhong Ao's eyes narrowed as a cold light flashed from the depths of his eyes. They said they don't want to be enemies with Nine Heavens' Holy Land and want to return home." "What a joke." Cao Guan stood up and shouted, "No one is allowed to leave. At this time, if anyone were to leave, it would definitely affect the morale of others. At that time, it would only lead to more and more people leaving. It looks like we should have a good talk with those who want to leave," Zhong Ao coldly said. As he spoke, he turned to look at Cao Guan and Wizard Tribulation. "What do you two think?" "Exactly." Cao Guan nodded solemnly. Wizard Tribulation also shrugged his shoulders indifferently. The three reached a consensus and walked out together. In another nearby tent, the members of Bold Independent Union were gathered together to discuss something. Union Master Yun Cheng constantly turned his head to look at his daughter, a thoughtful look on his face. Yun Xian seemed a bit absent-minded since she returned from the battle today. This made Yun Cheng feel like something had happened between his daughter and the new Holy Master of Nine Heavens' Holy Land. Union Master Yang. Ji Yang tilted his head and listened to the movements outside for a while, then said, "It seems that the people from the Star Azura sect and the Snow Chill House are about to leave." Yun Cheng nodded. "When I came back, I heard the leaders of the two forces discussing this matter. Speaking of which, our forces didn't suffer many losses at Saintess Nan's hands, only a few ordinary disciples suffered. This time, we simply came here to join in on the fun. We only wanted to seek justice from Nine Heavens' Holy Land, not to become enemies with them. Today, after witnessing Nine Heavens' Holy Land's heritage, it's only natural they want to leave." "What Union Master says is right," Ji Yang nodded. "I heard that only a few forces suffered heavy losses at the hands of Saintess Nan, the rest are the same as us. Zhong Ao's actions are quite intriguing though, they don't seem to have suffered any losses. Could it be they just want to take advantage of this opportunity to add insult to injury?" Yun Cheng sneered. "Of course their purpose isn't limited to just this. The Nine Peaks massive foundation is enough to make them envious, but I'm guessing their main goal is the new Holy Master and the only Saintess. As long as they can control these two," Ji Yang's eyes lit up as he suddenly understood, "so that's how it is, their appetite is really big. Before today, I hadn't thought about it, but now I understand. All the forces involved in this matter are just chess pieces for Zhong Ao and Cao Guan. We're still too weak. If we had a big backer, my Bold Independent Union wouldn't need to listen to Zhong Ao and Cao Guan's orders." Saying so, Yun Cheng intentionally or unintentionally glanced towards Yun Xian. After discovering that his daughter was silent, Yun Cheng couldn't help smiling bitterly. Yun Cheng was still very concerned about whether his daughter had anything to do with the new Holy Master. "Then Union Master, what should we do? Should we leave now?" Ji Yang asked. "Leave?" Yun Cheng sneered. "Do you think you can just leave like that? Chem. Ji Yang was taken aback and his face paled. Could it be? That's it, could it be? Yun Cheng smiled lightly before suddenly frowning. They're already here, let's go out and watch the show. Saying so, he stood up and walked out of the tent, the others hurriedly following behind. Outside, the cultivator from Star Assembly Sect and Snow Frozen Pavilion who was preparing to leave was stopped by Zhong Ao, Cao Guan, and Wizard Tribulation. No one knew what they were talking about. All they saw was Zhong Ao's gloomy expression as he exchanged a few words with the leaders of these two small forces before a sudden change occurred. Amidst a series of screams and howls, Zhong Ao, Cao Guan, and the others actually killed all the cultivators from these two small forces. In less than 10 breaths of time, more than 100 corpses were strewn all over the ground. All the onlookers were stunned, their eyes trembling as they watched this tragic scene, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, chills running down their spines. Looking around, Zhong Ao shouted, "Not only did you not seek revenge for your friends and family, you even dared to seek refuge with Nine Heaven's holy land, doing things that would only make your friends and family happy. These people are not qualified to live in this world. This Zhong is ashamed to be associated with them. The hatred of those who died, this Zhong will avenge them, all of you can rest in peace." Cao Guan continued, "Everyone, please calm down. Nine Heaven's holy land is just a grasshopper at the end of autumn, it won't last long. We will come up with a good plan, the next time we attack, we will be able to achieve our goal. Now disperse and have a good rest, in a few days we will need your help." Listening to these two talking to themselves, no one responded. Only at this moment did everyone realize that they were in trouble. Riding a tiger, haha. Yun Cheng smiled and shook his head, a look of self-deprecation on his face. Many of the masters and forces who had been enticed by Zhong Ao and Cao Guan understood the situation, but in fear of Zhong Ao and Cao Guan's strength, none of them dared to speak out. From the way they had treated Star Assembly Sect and Frozen Snow House, if they dared to oppose them, the next one to fall to the ground would be them. Gradually, the crowd dispersed and someone came to collect the corpses of those who had died. After returning to his tent, Yun Cheng looked around and was stunned for a moment before asking, "Where's the young lady?" Yun Xian had been with them just a moment ago, but now she was gone. "Xin Yu isn't here either, she probably had something to do and left temporarily," Ji Yang replied. Yun Cheng couldn't help feeling relieved and didn't ask any more questions. Somewhere in the jungle, Yun Xian and Ruan Xin Yu both vigilantly followed behind a young man until they left the gathering place and arrived at an extremely remote location. However, the young man's footsteps did not stop and he continued walking forward. "Hey, which force do you belong to? What's your name?" Ruan Xin Yu's patience was not very good, so after following him for a while, she couldn't help calling out after seeing him not say anything and only lead her and Yun Xian forward. This young man's strength wasn't high, so she wasn't worried he would do anything to her or Yun Xian. "Two young ladies, this one is Liu Gui, a disciple of War Spirit Temple," the young man responded quickly, his attitude quite good. "War Spirit Temple?" Ruan Xin Yu frowned. "Why did you call us out here? What is the big matter you just mentioned?" "Haha, you'll know when you follow me. Please rest assured, I'm not a bad person," Liu Gui laughed. Ruan Xin Yu coldly snorted, "Hearing you say that, why do I feel like you're just admitting you're hiding 300 tails? Since there's such a big matter, why didn't you report it to your temple master and instead sneak us out? Tell me honestly, what are you trying to do? I don't have any ulterior motives." Liu Gui wanted to cry, but no tears came out. "I was entrusted with this task. That person asked me to bring you. No, bring this young lady over. It was you who insisted on following." Entrusted with this task? Yun Xian's heart trembled when she heard this and inexplicably felt a sense of expectation, quickly asking, "Who entrusted you with this task?" Liu Gui hesitated for a while before helplessly saying, "Young lady, please don't ask, this one has his own difficulties and really can't say. But you can rest assured, we'll be there soon." Yun Xian quickly cast her gaze into the distance and released her divine sense, but couldn't see or sense anything. "Yun Xian, I think this little brat is a bit suspicious. Maybe there's some kind of trap waiting for us up ahead. I think we should go back," Ruan Xin Yu whispered beside Yun Xian. Yun Xian smiled lightly, "You're exaggerating. He's a disciple of War Spirit Temple. There's no reason for him to do such a thing. Then why did he bring you over? He clearly has some kind of ulterior motive. Maybe he's taken a fancy to your beauty. Don't scare me. Yun Xian hurriedly tightened her clothes. If the two of you really don't feel assured, how about restraining this one first? If we really encounter some kind of danger, this one's life or death will be up to you. Liu Gui listened to their whispers and immediately understood that they were still worried about him, so he took the initiative to propose. Good, then I won't hold back. Ruan Xin Yu immediately took action and sealed off Liu Gui's true qi in just a few seconds. Liu Gui's expression remained indifferent as he continued to lead the way. Seeing him like this, Yun Xian and Ruan Xin Yu felt relieved. After walking for more than a dozen kilometers, they came to a small lake nearby and Liu Gui let out a sigh of relief, pointing forward and saying, "We're here, that person is waiting for you over there." Looking in the direction he was pointing, Ruan Xin Yu couldn't help covering her mouth and crying out in shock. Yun Xian also wore a look of disbelief, her beautiful eyes flashing a strange light as she stared forward in a daze. Chapter 821. The surface of the lake was sparkling and the water was so clear that even the bottom could be seen, faintly revealing a few fat fish swimming in it. At the edge of the lake stood a man who was smiling at Yun Xian and Ruan Xin Yu, who had come with Liu Gui, raising his hand and greeting them, "Two friends, long time no see." Ruan Xin Yu and Yun Xian didn't answer, both of them dumbfounded for a moment. Yang Kai shook his head helplessly and stepped towards them. As they approached, Liu Gui, who was leading the way, hurriedly bowed, his expression filled with indescribable flattery. "Lord Holy Master, this lowly one had eyes but failed to see. I hope Lord Holy Master will not take offense." "It's fine," Yang Kai shook his head. Liu Gui's expression relaxed and he respectfully said, "Master, I have brought these two girls to you." "Good job." Yang Kai kindly patted the young man who had been controlled by the great heavenly attraction's soul brand, making him feel flattered, and quickly nodded, "Of course, of course." After hesitating for a moment, Liu Gui asked hesitantly, "Master, you can see that I have no malicious intentions towards you, so can you first return that soul brand to me? Rest assured, I, Liu Gui, will not allow anyone to reveal even half a word about you, otherwise I may be struck by lightning and die a horrible death." Seeing him making such a solemn vow, Yang Kai chuckled, "I can't promise you that for the time being, but I won't hurt you as long as you are obedient." "How could this one dare not obey?" Liu Gui said bitterly. Last time, when Yang Kai left the 9 Peaks for the Beast Sea jungle, he and some of his companions had tried to intercept Yang Kai, but not only had they failed, they had also been captured by Yang Kai. Now, he was forced to work for him. If the temple master found out about this, even if he had 9 lives, he wouldn't be able to survive. Considering all this, Liu Gui's heart filled with bitterness. Those who are obedient will get benefits. Yang Kai observed his expression and knew that he was uncomfortable, so he immediately threw a bottle of pills to him. Liu Gui reacted quickly and caught it. He opened the bottle and sniffed it suspiciously. His face was filled with ecstasy as he exclaimed, "Spirit-level pill? Keep up the good work, and you'll be rewarded in the future," Yang Kai praised. "Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Master Holy Master." Liu Gui was moved to tears. As an immortal ascension boundary cultivator, his status in War Spirit Temple was low and he was usually not valued. The pills used for cultivation were also distributed according to the number of people in the temple. Every month, he could receive at most 2 to 3 mysterious grade pills, but now, just to complete a trivial matter for Yang Kai, he had directly received a bottle of spirit-grade pills. This was simply a great thing. All of a sudden, it made Liu Gui dizzy. He didn't even care that Yang Kai had taken away his soul brand and controlled his life and death. Liu Gui secretly felt that following this Master Holy Master really was a promising future. Yang Kai saw his expression and was quite satisfied, knowing that this guy was a vile character who forbade righteousness at the sight of profit. To deal with such a person, a little bit of sweetness was enough to make him willing to risk his life. Casually lifting the seal Ruan Xin Yu had placed on him, Yang Kai waved his hand and said, "You can go back, there's nothing else for you to do here." "Yes, Holy Master. Next time, if you have any use for me, please don't hesitate to ask, Liu Gui said seriously. You will have that opportunity. Yang Kai smiled and nodded. Liu Gui turned around and left, but before he left, he shot a particularly envious look towards Yun Xian and muttered, "Young lady, you are truly blessed." It was as if he felt that this young woman being able to have some kind of friendship with this new holy master was simply climbing up the social ladder. Yun Xian's pretty face blushed as Ruan Xinyu glared at him. "Shut up." Liu Gui let out a dry laugh and quickly fled. After he left, Yang Kai turned to the two women in front of him with a smile. "After not seeing you for a few years, both of you are still as charming as ever." Glib-tongued. Ruan Xinyu snorted disdainfully. "You bastard, since you didn't die, why didn't you tell Yun Xian you were safe? You've made her sad for you for so long." "Xinyu." Yun Xian called out softly, pursing her red lips as her beautiful eyes stared towards Yang Kai, suddenly feeling that the man in front of her, who she had always been worried about, had suddenly become much taller and taller, to the point where she could only look up at him from afar. When she first met him, his cultivation wasn't even as high as hers, and he was dressed in old-fashioned clothes, as if he was an ignorant boy who had just walked out of some remote mountain forest. But after a few years, he had actually become the new holy master of Nine Heavens' holy land, and his cultivation was even higher than hers. Now, she was a peak immortal ascension boundary cultivator while he had already reached the second-order transcendent realm. Such a gap, even if she worked hard for a few dozen years, she would still be unable to close it. Standing in front of him, Yun Xian couldn't help feeling a sense of inferiority, her heart filled with bitterness. Perceiving Yun Xian's abnormality, Yang Kai frowned, not knowing what she was thinking, letting out a dry laugh. "Don't you recognize me? Even if I turned to ash, I'd recognize you." Yun Xian forced a smile. "Then why are you looking at me like I'm a stranger?" Yang Kai rubbed his nose. "If you're angry because I didn't tell you I was safe, I apologize. I've been too busy these past few years, and there are some things I really don't want others to know." "Mph, I knew you were a heartless bastard," Ruan Xinyu snorted angrily. "You clearly just wanted to play around with others and run away, unwilling to take responsibility." "What responsibility do I have to take? What happened that time was just an accident, okay?" Yang Kai said awkwardly. Speaking of which, he really hadn't thought about Yun Xian these past few years. Regarding this woman, although Yang Kai felt guilty, he didn't compare her to his senior sister Su Yang. If it weren't for the charm monster's divine sense poison, such an embarrassing situation wouldn't have happened. "Sure enough, you don't want to admit it, I really misjudged you," Ruan Xinyu said disdainfully, her eyes filled with disdain. Yang Kai shook his head helplessly. Yun Xian, who had been silent all this time, let out a long sigh and smiled lightly. "Xinyu, don't talk about this anymore, it's meaningless. Some things, some people, it's enough to let them go, there's no need to dwell on them. You're really free and easy." Ruan Xinyu looked at Yun Xian in surprise. "But you, why did you let a disciple of War Spirit Temple lead us here? Why would he listen to your orders?" Yun Xian looked at Yang Kai suspiciously. "Oh, I had a conflict with him half a month ago, so at that time, I used some kind of trick on him so I can communicate with him using my divine sense. Seeing you today, I had him lead you here," Yang Kai explained. "Is your bold independent union also involved in this matter?" Yun Xian nodded. "Your Holy Land's previous generation saintess went to my bold independent union's territory and killed some of our disciples. After that, Zhong Ao of Shattering Mystical Palace invited my father to come here and demand an explanation from Nine Heavens' Holy Land. My father decided to come here, but he didn't expect them to have no intention of reconciling with you and instead want to fight. They invited you here just to make up the numbers," Yang Kai sneered. "That should be the case. In fact, many of the great forces suffered the same fate as the bold independent union. Before we came here, there were 2 small forces who wanted to leave, but they were all killed by Zhong Ao." Yang Kai's eyes narrowed. They really didn't hold back. "After this incident, I don't think anyone will dare to leave again. On top of that, Zhong Ao said that the next time they attack, they will flatten your Nine Heavens' holy land. Do you think you can stop them?" Yang Kai slowly shook his head. "If we really fight, the result will be either you die or I die. If the Holy Land has a hard time, you won't have an easy time either. Then what are you going to do? You should leave quickly, it's too dangerous to stay there. Don't worry, I have a way to deal with it, but you shouldn't get involved, Yang Kai said seriously. If you get involved, your bold independent union will definitely suffer heavy losses. What do you mean? Yun Xian was surprised. It's hard to say now, but in any case, after you go back, persuade your father to take his people away from here as soon as possible. Something big will happen here soon. Yun Xian frowned and nodded lightly, not needing any further explanation from Yang Kai. She chose to believe him. Ruan Xin Yu sneered from the side, aren't you being a little too confident? Although your 9 Heavens Holy Lands barrier is quite good and you have several masters, as far as I know, Zhong-Ao's helpers have at least twice as many Saint Realm masters as yours. So what? Yang Kai sneered, if they don't leave, they'll have to pay the price. I really don't understand. Ruan Xin Yu slowly shook her head. How did a person like you become the new Holy Master of 9 Heavens Holy Land? Everyone has their own opportunities, Yang Kai chuckled. I'd rather not be the new Holy Master. Ruan Xin Yu curled her lips, obviously not believing him. In her opinion, any man who obtained such an opportunity would be ecstatic. How could they be so disdainful as Yang Kai said? This little brat is clearly trying to act innocent. Ruan Xin Yu looked down on Yang Kai more and more, secretly thinking that the reason his strength had improved so quickly was entirely because of 9 Heavens Holy Land's training. If 9 Heavens Holy Land was willing to train her, she could also reach such heights. Is there anything else you want to say? Yun Xian looked at Yang Kai and asked. Yang Kai was stunned for a moment before shaking his head. Nothing. Then we'll go back first. Being out here for too long will only arouse suspicion, Yun Xian said, looking at Yang Kai with a complicated expression. Saying so, Yun Xian glanced over at Yang Kai with a complicated expression before softly saying, no matter what, I must thank you for your reminder this time. I will definitely talk to my father about this matter. Also, you have to be careful. I know you're stronger than before and your status is also different, but your strength alone is limited. If you encounter something you can't solve, don't force yourself. Ian, I'll remember, Yang Kai nodded. Then we'll be going. If you can survive this crisis, you're welcome to visit Bold Independent City at any time in the future. Yun Xian smiled and left with Ruan Xin Yu. Standing in place and staring at their disappearing backs, Yang Kai's mood fluctuated. He hadn't expected this woman to leave so quickly, without the slightest hesitation. Originally, Yang Kai had been considering how to appease her emotions, but now it seemed there was no need for that. Chapter 822. Back in the jungle, Ruan Xin Yu, who was returning along the same path, angrily cursed, "You fool, since you saw him again, why did you take the initiative to leave? Isn't it fine as long as he's safe? What else could I have done?" Yun Xian smiled. Is this really okay? Ruan Xin Yu felt somewhat uncomfortable. It's fine. Yun Xian's expression was relaxed and indifferent. He's no longer someone I can reach. Even if I insist on staying with him, I'll only drag him down. It's better to leave now and leave behind a beautiful memory in each other's hearts. That's more than enough. You won't regret it in the future? Ruan Xin Yu asked. There's nothing to regret. Forget it, do as you please. In any case, it's your own business. Don't come crying to me later and say you didn't seize today's opportunity. I won't. Yun Xian said faintly as she glanced back, her beautiful eyes filling with a layer of mist. She knew better than anyone else that in that man's mind, she was just a passerby. If not for that, he would have definitely chased after her. After Yang Kai returned to 9 Heavens Holy Land, he immediately summoned Shu Hui and the other elders and protectors. Holy Master, according to your instructions, the disciples are ready to depart at any time. Shu Hui cupped his fists and said. Yang Kai nodded. Come with me. Everyone didn't know what he wanted to do, but none of them asked, simply following behind Yang Kai. Shuttling through the 9 peaks, a short time later, the group arrived in front of a huge blue stone engraved with the words Holy Tomb. The Holy Tomb was the resting place of 9 Heavens Holy Land's previous Holy Masters. Inside it were the bodies of countless ancestors. Arriving here, the expressions of the several protectors and elders all became solemn. You've all been curious about where the thousands of disciples will be placed. Why aren't you asking now? Yang Kai stood in front of the bluestone and looked around at the crowd with a smile. Everyone's expression became solemn as they suddenly understood. Shu Hui was shocked. Holy Master, the place you speak of, it couldn't be. Besides here, where else do you think I can place you? Yang Kai nodded lightly. The Holy Tomb is the best place. Absolutely not. Shu Hui's face changed greatly. This is the resting place of all the previous Holy Masters. How can we go in and disturb them? Death is like an extinguished lamp. There's nothing wrong with that. Yang Kai shook his head. The Holy Land has its own rules. Aside from the Holy Lord and the Saintess, no one else is allowed to enter the Holy Tomb. Rules are dead, but people are alive, Great Elder. Yang Kai persuaded earnestly. That may be the case, but, no, we really can't. If we enter the Holy Tomb, wouldn't we be disregarding the rules set by our ancestors? How can I maintain my prestige in front of the disciples in the future? You stubborn old man. Yang Kai was amused by him. He turned his eyes to the other elders and protectors and asked, "What do you think?" Shi Kuan quickly averted his gaze with a troubled expression on his face. Meng Tianfei and Luo Sheng didn't express their opinions either. Cheng Yutong opened her thin lips, wanting to say something, but no words came out. A bunch of waste. Yu Ying coldly snorted and solemnly said, "Holy Master, although Great Elder is indeed pedantic and stubborn, I think Great Elder is right on this matter." You also think so? Yang Kai stared at this beautiful woman in amazement. Yu Ying nodded firmly. Yang Kai rubbed his forehead and turned his eyes to the last person, and Ling don't ask me, I'm just a little girl, I don't understand anything. And Ling quickly tried to distance herself from him. Yang Kai grit his teeth and glared at her, expecting her to stand on his side, but at this critical moment, this little girl actually ignored him. Is there really no way? Yang Kai turned to Shu Hui and asked in a deep voice. Everything else is easy to discuss, as long as Holy Master gives the order, even if this old master's life is at stake, this old master will immediately offer it up, but this matter. Shu Hui firmly declared, a look of loyalty and righteousness plastered on his face, as if Yang Kai was a fatuous and tyrannical Holy Master. Fine. Without waiting for him to finish, Yang Kai interrupted him, then I wish you all the best. In less than 2 or 3 days, Zhong Ao's group will arrive and the Monster Race Great Senior will also lead his Monster Race Masters here. When that time comes, I want to see which one of you will be able to survive. Farewell. Saying so, he turned to leave. Shu Hui's eyes flashed and his hands moved quickly, grabbing Yang Kai's clothes and squeezing them tightly, not letting go, asking in amazement, Holy Master, where are you going? You can sit here and wait for death, but I still have a bright future ahead of me, so I won't accompany you. Naturally, I'm leaving, Yang Kai said matter-of-factly. But if you leave, what will happen to the Holy Land? Shu Hui suddenly panicked. What does that have to do with me? I found a way out for you, yet you refuse to take it. Do you want me to be buried with you? Yang Kai spat disdainfully. Sorry, I'm not that noble. This. Shu Hui was suddenly speechless, thinking to himself that this young man was truly a young man, acting so impetuously. Just a moment ago, this young man had been acting as the Holy Master of the Holy Land, so how did he suddenly change his mind and become indifferent to the Holy Land? Besides, Yang Kai snorted, as the Holy Master, if no one can carry out the decisions I made, what is the point of remaining here? Even if we survive this crisis, I'm afraid in the future I'll be nothing more than a puppet at your mercy. We wouldn't dare. Shu Hui panicked. Then why are you still holding on to me? Shu Hui quickly let go, embarrassed to death. Enough. Yu Ying snorted, glaring towards Yang Kai. The Holy Master should act like one. How can you act so shamelessly? Look at what you've done to Great Elder. Saying so, she sighed faintly and turned to Shu Hui. Great Elder, what do you think? Shu Hui wore a hesitant expression as he secretly observed Yang Kai's reaction, a moment later helplessly saying, since the Holy Master has made such a proposal, we can't break the rules set down by our ancestors. Let's vote by a show of hands. Besides the Holy Master, there are 7 people here, so if the majority agrees to enter the Holy Tomb, then, we can only do so. Good, Yu Ying nodded. Then who doesn't agree to enter the holy tomb? Raise your hand for me to see, Yang Kai asked as he swept his eyes over the crowd. The great elder hurriedly raised his hand. The remaining 5 guardian elders and Saintess and Ling all glanced at each other, none of them willing to make a move. You. Great elder stared at the crowd in surprise, a very hurt expression appearing on his face, as if he hadn't expected that when it came to upholding the rules set down by his ancestors, no one would agree with him. Slippery fellow. Yu Ying muttered softly. She knew that if Yang Kai had asked in a different way, the result would likely have been different. The new Holy Master was still a young man, so who would be willing to refute his opinion at this time? If things didn't go well, he might really develop a sense of rejection towards the Holy Land and simply abandon the Holy Land. No one could afford to bear such a responsibility. Great Elder, many thanks for letting me win, Yang Kai cupped his fists. Shu Hui smiled bitterly, since things have gotten to this point, this old master won't say anything more, we'll do as Holy Master says. I'm doing this for your own good, don't look so unhappy. If the Holy Land's previous Holy Masters knew about this, I'm afraid they would forgive you. I hope so. Opening the Holy Tomb with the help of the Holy Master's spirit ring, everyone followed Yang Kai inside, all of them wearing solemn expressions, as if they were on a pilgrimage. Looking around at this city-sized mysterious small world, which had no sun, moon, stars, white clouds, or blue sky, everyone couldn't help feeling a sense of unreality. This is the Holy Tomb. Yu Ying muttered softly, a look of disappointment flashing across her beautiful eyes. The scene in front of her was completely different from what she had imagined. In her imagination, the Holy Tomb was a peaceful place filled with lush mountains and green rivers, filled with birdsong and fragrant flowers. However, this place was filled with a thick yin qi and was surrounded by faint fluorescent lights, giving off a creepy feeling. Everyone else also looked around curiously, only Great Elder Shu Hui was constantly bowing to his surroundings, muttering something under his breath, seemingly afraid that their arrival would disturb the slumber of the previous Holy Masters. The energy here is so rich. Cheng Yu Tong gently breathed in, her full breasts heaving up and down exaggeratedly as a look of pleasant surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes. The world energy density between the 9 peaks was already quite good, but compared to the Holy Tomb, it was still dwarfed. No wonder the previous Holy Master liked to retreat here and cultivate. The environment is a bit poor, but this place is perfect for concealing one's strength. Yang Kai chuckled, when I first came here, I was also shocked by the rich world energy aura. I don't even know where it came from. This mysterious small world is much smaller than an average mysterious small world, but it should be enough to house all the disciples of the Holy Land. Listening to Holy Master's words, it seems you've been to other mysterious small worlds. Cheng Yu Tong's beautiful eyes lit up as she stared at Yang Kai in amazement. Although mysterious small worlds were well known to the world, there were very few people who had actually entered and exited them. The entrances to these mysterious spaces, which were independent of Tongxian realm, were extremely well hidden and difficult to discover. Yang Kai chuckled and exchanged a glance with An Ling understanding everything without saying anything. Where are the coffins of the previous Holy Masters? How come none of them are here? Shu Hui took a look around and couldn't help feeling stunned. There should be many coffins here. Yang Kai's face twitched as he asked tentatively, how do you know there are coffins here? There should be. Every previous Holy Master would build his own coffin and send it into the Holy Tomb. And this place is a bit too clean, there's nothing here. Hearing him say this, everyone discovered that something was wrong. The inside of the Holy Tomb was flat, as if it had been cut by a knife. Although the ground was covered in dust and fine powder, there were still some traces left behind by the violent surge of energy. Where are the corpses of the previous Holy Masters? Shakuan scratched his head and looked around. There may be some unknown secrets in the Holy Tomb. The last time I came here I also didn't find anything, Yang Kai said quickly. If Shu Hui learned that because he had fused with that drop of demon god golden blood, all the bones and coffins in the Holy Tomb had been destroyed, it was hard to imagine what he would think. Chapter 823. After a full day and night of work, everything was arranged properly. The thousands of disciples from the Holy Land poured into the Holy Tomb, filling the gloomy, mysterious small world with vitality. Although the number of people was not small, the Holy Tomb was more than enough to accommodate them all. Shu Hui and the others had also prepared a lot of living materials in advance, enough for the Holy Land's disciples to live here for a long time. Yang Kai also told them to put aside their worries for the time being and concentrate on cultivating here. When the time came, he would naturally release them again. Shu Hui and the others nodded in agreement. Leaving the Holy Tomb, Yang Kai sat alone atop one of the 9 peaks, overlooking the huge foundation that had stretched on for countless years, his mood calm and tranquil. At this moment, 9 Heaven's Holy Land was completely silent, with no one else around except for him. Immersing himself in his secret art, Yang Kai quietly waited. After an unknown amount of time, Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes and stared off in a certain direction, grinning silently and mysteriously. Zhong Ao and the others had come again and were currently cursing and swearing in front of the barrier, bombarding it indiscriminately, a series of loud bangs reverberating throughout the 9 peaks. Yang Kai's figure flickered, and when he reappeared, he was standing not far in front of Zhong Ao and the others. Zhong Ao's eyes narrowed as he shouted, "Little brat, you still have the courage to come out? Today you'll die." Cao Guan beside him also sneered, "Open the barrier and surrender, and we'll spare your life." Yang Kai turned a deaf ear to these words and swept his eyes around, his gaze pausing on Bold Independent Union for a moment before quickly shifting away. "Very good, since all of you insist on becoming enemies with the Holy Land, you can count on your own luck." Many people averted their eyes in fear, while on Bold Independent Union's side, Yun Shen's expression was extremely gloomy. She had discussed with Yun Cheng for a long time the night before and had also passed on the advice Yang Kai had given her, but now that Bold Independent Union was riding a tiger, Yun Cheng had no choice but to follow Zhong Ao and the others. Now they met again. Yun Shen couldn't help feeling a sense of guilt for failing to live up to Yang Kai's good intentions. "Where's Shu Hui? Why is it only you?" Zhong Ao keenly sensed that something was wrong. Today, 9 Heaven's Holy Land was far too quiet. Not only was there no trace of anyone walking around, even the only one who had come out to meet the enemy was the new Holy Master. Shu Hui and the other elders were nowhere to be seen. "There's no need for the Great Elder to deal with you." Yang Kai curled his lips. "How arrogant. Wait for me to capture you. Let's see if you can still be so arrogant." Zhong Ao was completely enraged. He waved his hand and shouted, "Everyone, there is no need to hold back. I will restrain this brat. You all work together to break this damn barrier. The foundation of the 9 peaks shall be shared by everyone." Hearing him say this, the gazes of many hesitant cultivator instantly burned. 9 Heaven's Holy Land's heritage was extremely deep, and there were countless rare treasures, pills, and profound secret arts and martial skills stored inside. Obtaining even a single one of these things was a huge benefit. Birds die for food and men die for wealth. Zhong Ao threw out such a temptation. Naturally, this could arouse the fighting spirit of many people. In an instant, under the leadership of Cao Guan and Wizard Tribulation, more than a dozen Saint Realm Masters attacked the barrier together, but Zhong Ao still summoned his own artifact and broke through the barrier's blockade, striking towards Yang Kai. Obviously, as he had said, he wanted to restrain Yang Kai's actions. Yang Kai simply chuckled, not intending to confront Zhong Ao at all. His figure floated backwards, avoiding the other party's attack, his expression indifferent and cold. He didn't even try to stop them from bombarding the barrier. Zhong Ao's heart clenched as a bad feeling filled his heart, his pair of eyes staring towards Yang Kai, wondering what he was planning to do. Asterisk Kai Kai Kai, asterisk Xiao Xiao Xiao, asterisk. A series of ear-piercing sounds rang out as countless attacks bombarded the barrier. To everyone's surprise, 9 Heaven's Holy Land's barrier seemed to be made of paper, unable to withstand a single blow. With so many masters joining forces, after less than 30 breaths of time, the barrier surrounding the 9 peaks shattered, allowing them to move forward unimpeded. Everyone was stunned, none of them having expected things to go so smoothly. After a moment of shock, Zhong Ao was overjoyed and shouted, "Little brat, let's see where you're going to run now." Saying so, He and the dozen or so Saint Realm masters rushed into the 9 peaks and surrounded Yang Kai. Following closely behind them, the other forces that had gathered here also rushed in, as if they were afraid that if they were too slow, the benefits would be snatched up by others. Bold Independent Union's Union Master Yun Cheng's expression changed slightly as he released his divine sense to carefully investigate the 9 peaks, a moment later his expression also changing slightly as he stepped forward. But before he could even step out though, he noticed that his clothes were being tugged on. Looking back, he saw Yun Xian looking at him with pleading eyes. "Xian, what's wrong?" Yun Cheng frowned and asked. "Father, the 9 peaks barrier has been broken, let them do the rest, we should go back now." Yun Xian bit her red lips and said, "Go back now?" Yun Cheng thought for a moment before smiling gently. "Didn't I tell you about it the night before? Why are you saying such things now? Father, please believe me, if we stay here, it really won't do us any good." "Yes, Union Master, it's time to go now, while their attention is all on that bastard," Ruan Xinyu quickly said. "You think so too?" Yun Cheng glanced over at Ruan Xinyu thoughtfully. "Do you really believe in that little brat?" The night before, Yun Xian had conveyed Yang Kai's advice. Yun Cheng also knew that this new holy master had met with his daughter the day before yesterday, but he didn't take Yang Kai's advice seriously. The difference in strength was too great, so Yun Cheng really couldn't think of any way to save 9 Heavens Holy Land. The only thing they could rely on was the 9 Peaks Spirit Array and Barrier, but now they had given up on that. "Xian, is it because of your old friendship that you don't want to add insult to injury?" Yun Cheng saw through Yun Xian's worries. "Don't worry, if he really has the ability to escape this disaster, my bold independent union wouldn't make much of a difference. If he doesn't have this ability, my bold independent union wouldn't make much of a difference, but I think he's already at the end of his rope, what a pity." Yun Cheng sighed. Originally, he thought this was a good opportunity for bold independent union to grow stronger. After all, the relationship between his daughter and the new holy master of 9 Heavens Holy Land was not shallow. If he really survived this disaster, would bold independent union need to worry about not having a backer in the future? But now, it seemed this 9 Heavens Holy Land was only strong on the outside but weak on the inside. At this most critical time, only the new holy master had come out to meet the enemy. All the elders, protectors, and disciples had all disappeared. Yun Cheng couldn't help but wonder if this new holy lord had been abandoned here to distract Zhong Ao and the others so that the others could escape. "Don't worry, Zhong Ao is reluctant to kill him," Yun Cheng comforted. "This little brat is of great use to Zhong Ao." Zhong Ao had united so many forces and masters to attack 9 Heavens Holy Land. Wasn't his biggest goal to obtain this inheritance? And now, this inheritance should be in Yang Kai's hands, so how could Zhong Ao be willing to kill him? "If you don't want to become enemies with him, you and Xin you should hide away," Yun Cheng said, turning to Ji Yang and ordering, "Take the young lady to a safe place." "Yes," Ji Yang nodded, his yuan qi surging and wrapping up Yun Xian's daughter before flying off into the distance. Yun Xian's face was filled with bitterness as she wanted to continue persuading her father, but she didn't know what to say, her beautiful eyes filled with worry as she watched Yang Kai being surrounded by so many masters. After his daughter left, Yun Cheng snorted and flew forward. "Little brat, your death is near, why haven't you surrendered yet?" Zhong Ao shouted at Yang Kai, his brow filled with a triumphant expression, his eyes blazing, as if he had already obtained the inheritance of 9 Heavens Holy Land. Cao Guan also shouted, trying to persuade Yang Kai to surrender, telling him not to stubbornly resist otherwise he would have to face the consequences. Yang Kai just stared at them indifferently, not saying a word. The place where Yang Kai stood was completely surrounded by more than a dozen Saint Realm masters and several dozen transcendents, all of them glaring at him menacingly. However, the look on Yang Kai's face was one of complete calmness, causing everyone to secretly fear him, none of them daring to be the first to rush up and embarrass him. This was the 9 Peaks. Yang Kai had used the power of the 9 Peaks to display the strength of a Saint Realm Master, so if he was forced into a corner, besides Zhong Ao, no one would be able to stop him. "Little brat, you're too weak, how disappointing." Tribulation, the wizard of Netherworld's sect, suddenly said meaningfully as he laughed strangely. Yang Kai glanced over at him and grinned. "What do you want?" Wizard Tribulation slowly shook his head, his green aura pulsing like a ghost. "I thought you had some more unexpected means, but it seems I overestimated you. If that's really all you have, I advise you to surrender honestly and allow me to seal your Yuan Qi, lest Brother Zhong and Brother Cao accidentally hurt you." "Haha, I appreciate your good intentions." Yang Kai chuckled, "But if you want to capture me with just the few of you, I'm afraid you're overestimating yourselves. Too arrogant." Cao Guan was furious. No transcendent realm cultivator would dare spout nonsense in front of so many saints. This little brat's arrogance had obviously reached a new level. "Temple Master." Not far away, a figure quickly flew over and came to Cao Guan's side. "There's no one inside, all the disciples of Nine Heavens' Holy Land have disappeared." "Not a single person?" Cao Guan was shocked. En. At the same time, Zhong Ao, Wizard Tribulation, and the others also received the same report. This discovery inevitably made them a little vigilant, all of them wearing dignified expressions, wondering what kind of trick Nine Heavens' Holy Land was playing. Thousands of people were gone just like that. This was too abnormal. A faint uneasiness rose in his heart, and Zhong Ao immediately decided not to delay any longer. A long night was fraught with dreams. Shouting angrily, "Everyone, follow me, we'll capture this little brat first. As long as this little brat is in our hands, even if Shu Hui and the others have great ability, they won't be able to cause any trouble." Chapter 824. Zhong Ao shouted. Everyone nodded, Yuan Qi condensing his qi and preparing to attack together with him to subdue Yang Kai. But before they could act though, a series of screams suddenly rang out not far away. These screams reached everyone's ears, causing all of them to pale. Releasing their divine senses to investigate, after a couple of breaths, the masters who had gathered around Yang Kai all wore gloomy expressions. None of them were weak, so under the investigation of their respective divine senses, they were shocked to discover that a violent aura was pouring in from outside the 9 peaks. In an instant, the entire 9 peaks were in a state of panic. On the horizon, there was also a billowing black cloud that was rapidly approaching. Inside this black cloud, a number of figures could be vaguely seen, standing proudly in the void, coldly staring down as an oppressive aura descended from the sky like a great mountain. Zhong Ao's complexion changed greatly, but there was no time to deal with Yang Kai, so he could only shout, "What's going on?" Screams rang out one after another as the smell of blood filled the air. No one had the time to answer Zhong Ao's question. After a while, a shattering mystical palace disciple covered in blood rushed over and reported, "Palace Master, bad news, a lot of monster beast have come." "Monster beast?" Zhong Ao's eyes narrowed as he stared over, just in time to see the terrifying scene of a giant blue-eyed python swallowing a cultivator whole. Zhong Ao didn't know which great force this cultivator belonged to, but his strength wasn't too low, at least a peak immortal ascension boundary master, but in front of this giant python, he didn't even have the strength to fight back. The giant python's giant maw seemed to emit an endless suction force as it directly swallowed the cultivator whole, causing a visible bulge to slide down the python's neck. Asterisk kai kai kai, asterisk a series of attacks landed on the giant python's body, causing dazzling sparks to fly. The giant python's body was covered in black scales and seemed to be impregnable, not suffering any damage at all. Shaking its head and wagging its tail, it swallowed a few more cultivators and sent them flying, exploding into a bloody mist on the spot. This was nothing more than a scene from a bloody purgatory. As far as the eye could see, the 9 peaks were filled with ferocious monster beasts of all shapes and sizes. Those monster beasts had crimson eyes, and their bloodlust had been aroused. They were wreaking havoc in the crowd, creating sensational massacres. No one could stop them. Miserable screams rose and fell continuously, mixed with great panic and loss. Where did this monster beast come from? Zhong Ao's face paled as he stared at the black cloud with dread. It seems to be coming from the direction of the Beast Sea Forest. Cao Guan hurriedly replied. Hearing this, all the masters around Yang Kai shuddered as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. The Beast Sea Forest was the territory of the monster race. There was a monster race great sovereign there, a peak expert in the world. Looking at the rapidly approaching black cloud, everyone instantly understood what was going on. That hateful little brat, actually colluding with Monster Beast. Zhong Ao's eyes spat fire as he turned to look at Yang Kai. At a glance, he couldn't help gawking. Yang Kai, who should have been in the middle of the encirclement, had at some point disappeared, leaving behind only a few dozen masters. The black cloud finally descended upon the 9 peaks, and from the rolling clouds, a 7-colored light suddenly appeared. Accompanied by this 7-colored mist, a graceful figure flapped her wings and floated down from above, a cold and indifferent expression on her delicate and beautiful face. Cai Dai. Following closely behind Cai Dai, 20 to 30 monster race masters who had already transformed into human form grinned wickedly as they spread out in all directions. Quangsha took the lead, landing like a cannonball on the ground, smashing open a large crater as he charged towards a nearby Transcendent Realm cultivator like a bolt of lightning, allowing this Transcendent Realm cultivator's attack to land on his sturdy body before grabbing him and biting down on his neck. Blood splashed out as Quangsha seemed to have gone mad, his eyes filled with joy. The Transcendent Realm cultivator didn't even have time to think about resisting before his neck was directly bitten through by Quangsha. This bloody scene was imprinted into the eyes of the nearby cultivator, causing him to suddenly become frightened and flee in all directions, none of them daring to face Quangsha. Before they could escape to a safe place, several demonic beasts rushed out from the side and blocked their way. At the top of one of the 9 peaks, Yang Kai stood there, indifferently watching the bloody purgatory below. A figure flashed and the monster race Great Senior appeared next to him. Great Senior, you've come late, Yang Kai greeted with a smile. It takes a lot of effort to gather manpower, you didn't give me much time to prepare, the monster race Great Senior coldly snorted. How many have come? 3,000, 6th order and above. 80, 7th order and above. 9, 8th order and above. Yang Kai couldn't help raising his brow, a good lineup. Otherwise, do you think that I alone would be able to guard the Beast Sea Forest and ensure the safety of that area? I would have long since been wiped out by you humans. The Great Senior slowly shook his head, just like your 9 heavens holy land, you rely too much on your holy master. Once the old holy master died, this place became vulnerable. It's them, not me, Yang Kai chuckled. Yang Kai chuckled. He also saw the drawbacks of 9 heavens holy land. Unlike the monster race, in addition to their peak Great Senior, there were many other masters, so even if this Great Senior died one day, the Beast Sea jungle would not be a place they could casually invade. This time, it was likely the monster race had turned out in full force. Remember what you promised me, the Great Senior glanced over at Yang Kai. Rest assured, I've already made a promise to you, how could I go back on it? Yang Kai nodded lightly. How do you want me to deal with these invaders? The monster race Great Senior asked again. Do as you see fit, Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders, putting on a look of indifference. The Great Senior sneered, you little slippery brat, you want me to kill them all, don't you? Yang Kai laughed dryly but didn't answer, tacitly agreeing. But I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Killing too many people won't do my monster race any good, it will only provoke you humans to seek revenge, the Great Senior snorted. He had long seen that Yang Kai was using the monster race's strength to solve his own crisis. If they killed these people, their hatred would only be directed at the monster race while 9 heavens holy land could remain uninvolved. Although he understood this, the monster race Great Senior still couldn't refuse Yang Kai's proposal, but when it came to implementing it, he naturally couldn't disregard Yang Kai's wishes. But there's one thing I don't quite understand, is it convenient for you to explain it to me, boy? The monster race Great Senior squinted towards Yang Kai. What is it? Where are all the people from your 9 heavens holy land? You seem to be the only one here, right? Naturally they've hidden themselves somewhere safe. Great Senior doesn't need to worry, after this matter is over, the alchemist and artifact refiner I promised you will return on time. That's for the best, you won't dare deceive me. Down below, seeing the monster race's menacing momentum and countless masters, Zhong Ao and the others also knew that they had no choice but to wrap up Yuan Qi and use their movement skills to escape. Even if they were unwilling, there was nothing they could do. Bold Independent Union's Union Master, Yun Cheng, was dumbfounded. Looking at the countless casualties he had suffered, at this moment, he felt heartfelt regret. If he had listened to his daughter's advice just now and taken everyone to retreat immediately, they wouldn't have been involved in this storm and there wouldn't have been any casualties. But now, it was too late to evacuate. Nearly half of the hundreds of disciples he had brought with him had been killed or injured. Even he himself was forced to flee under the onslaught of the monster race masters. Seeing Zhong Ao and the others retreat, Yun Cheng didn't dare to linger any longer, calling out to the remaining disciples who were still alive to follow behind Zhong Ao and open up a path of survival. After the arrival of the monster race, less than a stick of incense worth of time had passed before the battle gradually subsided. The 9 peaks were now littered with corpses and blood, a ghastly scene. Of the cultivator gathered on the 9 peaks, at least 1,000 had died. One after another, huge monster beast after another raced across the purgatory-like ground, chasing after each other. "Don't chase," a tender voice suddenly called out as Cai Dai's beautiful figure landed lightly on the ground. The monster beast chasing after the 9 peaks all heard this voice and stopped, as if they had been struck by a curse, all of them roaring towards the heavens. The sound of this howl spread out, causing the surviving cultivator to become even more panicked, all of them mustering all of their strength to flee. "It's so much easier to work with people on hand." Yang Kai sighed. The huge crisis facing 9 Heaven's Holy Land had been so easily resolved by the monster race, it was truly frustrating. "This strength is the accumulation of my monster race's strength over hundreds of thousands of years. Do you think it's so easy to obtain?" Great Senior sneered, "But your 9 Heaven's Holy Land isn't bad, although it's a bit worse than my monster race." "Indeed, it's worse, otherwise we wouldn't have needed your help," Yang Kai nodded. "Cultivate well, in less than 100 years you'll be on the same level as me. At that time, your 9 Heaven's Holy Land will become strong again." 100 years. "Great Senior, you're looking down on me too much," Yang Kai spat disdainfully. "Don't tell me 20 to 30 years. This senior won't believe such nonsense." "Just wait and see," Yang Kai rolled his eyes. Saying so, Cai Dai flew up and landed lightly in front of the two, glancing over at Yang Kai faintly before reporting, "Great Senior, the humans have all fled." "Good, pass down the order, clean up the battlefield, then let everyone do as they please. From now on, these 9 peaks will be my monster race's territory. We need to make good use of the resources here." "Yes." "Boy, I've solved your problem for you, shouldn't you also fulfill your promise?" Yang Kai nodded. Since he had made an agreement with Great Senior, he had no intention of backing out. Arriving at the Holy Tomb, Yang Kai released the alchemists and artifact refiners who had been arranged in advance and handed them over to Great Senior. Great Senior was extremely satisfied. Although the Holy Land's alchemists and artifact refiners were a little frightened when facing the monster race, after Great Senior guaranteed their safety, they all calmed down. Yang Kai also opened the 9-peak spirit array for the monster race, allowing the world energy aura here to once again become rich. As for the spirit array diagram, Yang Kai had already found a good piece of jade and engraved it with his divine sense before handing it over to the Great Senior for him to comprehend. These spirit array diagrams were related to the monster race's beast transformation pond and were the most important things to the monster race Great Senior. Chapter 825. 100 kilometers away from the 9 peaks. In a dense forest, many cultivator figures were hidden, none of them daring to breathe too loudly. The sun shone through the leaves, illuminating the faces of Zhong Ao and the others. It had been 10 days since the day they were defeated by the demon clan and escaped with their lives. During these 10 days, whenever Zhong Ao recalled the scene of that day, he would be filled with unwillingness. He thought he could capture that little brat and force him to hand over the inheritance of 9 Heaven's Holy Land, but he had never expected that the monster race would intervene at the critical moment. The monster race Great Senior had brought several dozen masters with him and forced them to flee. Today, the great forces that had gathered around Zhong Ao had long since dispersed, leaving only shattering mystical palace, war spirit temple, and netherworld sect. With such a force, even 9 Heaven's Holy Land couldn't take them down, let alone take revenge on the monster race. On top of that, these 3 forces had also suffered heavy losses and didn't have many masters left. Withdrawing was undoubtedly the best choice, but Zhong Ao still couldn't swallow his anger. Even after joining forces with so many great forces, he still couldn't do anything to Nine Heavens' Holy Land. Jong Ao could already see the scene of his shattering mystical palace becoming the laughingstock of the world. Blood boiling in his chest, Jong Ao's expression became more and more gloomy. That despicable little brat, actually daring to collude with the monster race, how hateful. Jong Ao roared as he stared towards Nine Heavens' Holy Land with bloodshot eyes, filled with unwillingness and helplessness. Cao Guan also wore an angry expression as he whispered, "He dares to commit such a crime. Once this news spreads, I think it will be difficult for him to establish himself in this world in the future." Wizard Tribulation grinned meaningfully. Nine Heavens' Holy Land is quite interesting. Actually joining forces with the monster race, it's quite unexpected. It's not necessarily Shu Hui's idea. I've been dealing with Shu Hui for several dozen years, so I have some understanding of his temperament. It's impossible for him to do such a thing. It's probably that little brat's idea. Jong Ao coldly snorted. The most important thing now is how to capture him from the monster race. Ian, that's a bit difficult. Cao Guan frowned deeply. You still don't want to give up? Wizard Tribulation looked at them in surprise, shaking his head. With the monster race great senior protecting him, what ability do you have to capture him? Can he hide for the rest of his life? If I don't catch that brat, I swear I won't give up. Jong Ao's face was filled with ruthlessness. That's what I meant. Why? Brother Wizard, you've accepted our benefits, and now you want to back out. While speaking, he looked at the Wizard Tribulation gloomily. The Wizard Tribulation quickly raised his hand and said, "It has always been the purpose of the Ghost sect to accept money and solve problems for people. Since I have accepted your things, I will naturally help you to the end. That would be for the best." Jong Ao nodded in satisfaction. While the three were talking, a cultivator who had gone to investigate the 9 peaks hurriedly returned and respectfully bowed before reporting, "The 9 peaks have been occupied by the monster race. I couldn't find a single Nine Heavens Holy Land disciple there, only some traces of monster beast and monster race masters. They seem to be busy mining that rich vein of crystals." Hearing this, Jong Ao and Cao Guan's faces twitched. If it weren't for the interference of the demon clan, that rich mineral vein would have been theirs by now. "Are you sure you haven't seen a single Nine Heavens Holy Land disciple?" Jong Ao asked with a frown. This news made him very concerned. Not seeing them during the previous battle could be explained as them hiding, but now that they were nowhere to be seen, it was somewhat intriguing. Yes, this subordinate and several dozen others have been monitoring the periphery for a day and night but have not found a single Nine Heavens Holy Land disciple. Nine Heavens Holy Land has thousands of disciples, it doesn't make sense for them to all suddenly disappear. Cao Guan wore a puzzled expression and muttered, "Brother Jong, could it be that the monster race?" Hearing this, Jong Ao's expression shook and he let out a strange laugh. "It's possible, the monster race is not so easy to deal with. Perhaps that little brat failed to collude with them and instead ended up being targeted by them. This really is ugly people making trouble, lifting a stone to smash their own feet. That little brat deserves it." Cao Guan also cheered up, his mood suddenly becoming better. But if that's the case, that little brat is now in the hands of that monster race great senior. How can we get him out? Jong Ao frowned and pondered for a long time but still couldn't come up with a good idea, falling silent for a while. Inside a spacious palace, Yang Kai and the monster race great senior sat cross-legged facing each other. Between the two of them was a series of exquisite spirit arrays. Yang Kai endured his impatience as he explained to the great senior. Originally, he had already engraved the several spirit arrays related to the beast transformation pond into a jade stone, but after the monster race great senior examined them carefully, he expressed that he couldn't understand them and insisted that Yang Kai personally explain them to him. Fortunately, this guy's perception wasn't bad. Although he had never come into contact with these spirit arrays before, after 10 days of careful instruction from Yang Kai, he was finally able to grasp the key points of these spirit arrays. All that was left was for him to slowly comprehend them on his own. When the time came, if the monster race great senior encountered any problems, he would be able to fix them himself, no longer needing Yang Kai's help. After Yang Kai finished his explanation, the monster race great senior let out a soft breath, a look of shock flashing across his face as he muttered, These spirit arrays are in accordance with the heavenly way and are of great benefit to the cultivation of the martial Tao. Who taught you these things? No comment. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. Oh well, it's not like I want to pry into your secrets. It's just that there are many mysteries hidden in these spirit diagrams that I'm afraid you won't be able to see with your current cultivation and eyesight. Although my attainments in spirit diagrams are not as good as yours, my eye for people and things is much better than yours. Boy, treasure and study these spirit diagrams well. One day, you will discover that the power hidden in them is much greater than you think. Yang Kai furrowed his brow thoughtfully. I heard you say before that you are an alchemist. The monster race great senior suddenly asked. Yang Kai nodded. Since you are an alchemist, why don't you stay and perform alchemy for my clan? I think your alchemy skills shouldn't be bad. My clan has collected many rare materials over the years, materials that you humans will never be able to find. No need, Yang Kai stood up, I'm not interested. Don't say that, everything can be discussed. Tell me, what kind of treatment do you want? I can promise you, the monster race great senior smiled. Yang Kai slowly shook his head, I appreciate great senior's kindness, but I still have other things to do, so I won't stay here any longer. Right, the reflecting moon pond I told you about, you must help me keep an eye on it, someone will come to investigate in the future. You're leaving? The great senior frowned. If I don't leave now, I'm afraid I won't be able to. Yang Kai stared into the great senior's eyes without fear. The great senior smiled and pondered for a moment before nodding. Go, we'll meet again. Take care of yourself, great senior. It may not be long before I return to take back the 9 peaks, so you must take advantage of this time to mine the resources of the 9 peaks. Saying so, without waiting for the great senior's reply, Yang Kai's figure flickered and disappeared from the palace. After Yang Kai left, the great senior's expression became dignified as he sneered, a few years. That little brat looks down on us too much. He had brought his clansmen here from the Beast Sea jungle with great fanfare, taking the risk of enmity with the human race in order to help Yang Kai solve the current crisis, so how could he only occupy the 9 peaks for a few years? Great senior, are you just going to let him go like this? Cai Dai appeared like a ghost and frowned, he holds the secrets of the beast transformation pond. But my monster race is also indebted to him. The great senior's expression became complicated. The great senior's expression was complicated. I know what you're afraid of, but that little brat is trustworthy. He won't easily reveal the secrets of the beast transformation pond. My monster race can't be like the human race, biting the hand that feeds us. Cai Dai, don't try to make any devious plans. I know you want to put him under house arrest, so keep your despicable thoughts to yourself. Yes. Cai Dai respectfully responded, glancing in the direction Yang Kai disappeared, suddenly chuckling, but is also quite arrogant. First he claimed he could catch up to great senior in 20 to 30 years, and now he's saying he'll take back the 9 peaks in just a few years. I really don't know what he's thinking. Young and frivolous. The great senior snorted, but I always feel like what he says will come true. That little brat is a bit strange, so I don't want to touch him. I just want to see if he can really do what he says he will do. So that's how it is. A look of understanding appeared on Cai Dai's face. You should smile more. You look better when you smile than when you keep a straight face, the great senior suddenly said. Cai Dai blushed as she glared at the great senior. How can great senior speak like Kwangsha? Ha, beauty should naturally blossom more. What's the point of hiding it? It's the same as being a human. What matters most is one's nature. In this regard, I quite admire that little brat, but his unruliness is a bit lawless. Sooner or later he'll suffer a loss. Saying so, a gloating expression appeared on the great senior's face, as if he could already see the scene of Yang Kai suffering a loss. Cai Dai couldn't help pursing her lips. She never knew that the great senior had such a side to him. Outside the 9 peaks, Yang Kai secretly felt a chill run down his spine. Cooperating with the monster race was undoubtedly like asking a tiger for its skin. The slightest carelessness could lead to eternal damnation. Although the great senior's attitude towards him was quite good, dealing with such a master, Yang Kai couldn't help but raise his guard. After all, no one knew whether or not the great senior would turn hostile in the next moment. The gap in strength was simply too great. The monster race Great Senior could have a friendship with the old Holy Master because both of them stood at the same height and possessed similar strength. On the other hand, although Yang Kai was the successor of the old Holy Master, he was still just a second-order transcendent cultivator. In the eyes of the Great Senior, this didn't mean anything. Quietly releasing his divine sense and confirming that no one was following him, Yang Kai finally relaxed. He was certain that if he stayed in the Holy Land for any longer, he wouldn't be able to leave. The Great Senior would definitely force him to stay behind and perform alchemy. Chapter 8:26. It was not until he had run several dozen kilometers that Yang Kai gradually relaxed. Before he could catch his breath, Yang Kai's expression suddenly changed as he turned his head in a certain direction. Over there, in the midst of a grey fog, a handkerchief-like artifact was rapidly flying towards him. As the handkerchief spun, the strange beast patterns engraved on it seemed to have come to life, roaring and surging forward ferociously. Immediately after the handkerchief, a rainbow light suddenly appeared, and a fierce aura oppressed Yang Kai, causing his hair to stand on end. Not daring to neglect, Yang Kai quickly displayed one of the 9 heavens' divine skills, the Grand Heavenly Shield. A golden shield quickly took shape in front of him. The strange beasts that rushed out of the handkerchief could not stop their momentum and crashed into the Grand Heavenly Shield one after another, turning into fluorescent light and disappearing. The rainbow light that followed also hit the Grand Heavenly Shield, making a crisp sound as it was bounced back. The Grand Heavenly Shield collapsed at the same time. Yang Kai let out a muffled groan as he glared in the direction of the source of the attack. Over there, Zhong Ao laughed. "Boy, you actually dared to come out. The heavens are really helping me." Cao Guan caught the rainbow light in his hand and a long sword appeared in his hand. The wizard Tribulation floated behind the two like a ghost, quietly sizing up Yang Kai. The three originally thought that there was no hope of capturing Yang Kai this time, and just as they were about to recover and plan for the long term, they saw Yang Kai run out of the 9 peaks. Overjoyed, they quickly attacked, trying to subdue Yang Kai in one fell swoop. But what they did not expect was that even without the power of the 9 peaks, Yang Kai was able to block the first wave of attacks from Zhong Ao and Cao Guan, unscathed. Only now did they realize that everyone had underestimated Yang Kai's strength. "Let's see where you can run this time. This place is 100 kilometers away from your 9 peaks, even if you want to ask that monster race Great Senior for help, it's impossible," Cao Guan laughed. "You're really annoying." Yang Kai looked at the three impatiently. He had not expected that they would dare to remain here. Yang Kai had thought that after the monster race took action, these 3 forces would flee back to their sects and close themselves up in seclusion, but unexpectedly, even after everyone else had left, these 3 forces were still waiting for him. 3 Saint Realm Masters, one of whom was a second-order saint. Yang Kai knew he was not their opponent. With Yang Kai's current cultivation and means, he could at most exchange blows with a first-order saint, but even then, he may not necessarily win. The Saint Realm and the Transcendent Realm seemed to be fundamentally different. After coming into contact with these 2 Great Senior Saint Great Senior Great Seniors Great Senior Great Seniors Great Seniors Senior Yang Kai's SSSSS not his. "Hihi, brat, there's a path to heaven but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell but you barge in. Obediently surrender and I'll let you suffer less." Zhong Ao coldly snorted, and as he spoke, his spiritual energy silently penetrated towards Yang Kai, trying to affect his mind and make him lose his fighting spirit. Yang Kai remained motionless, ignoring Zhong Ao's divine sense like a gentle breeze. Zhong Ao's expression became solemn, suddenly feeling a bit strange. This little brat in front of him who was only a second-order transcendent seemed to have transformed into a bottomless black hole. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to probe his depths. "You want to capture me with just the few of you?" Yang Kai laughed happily, not putting these 3 people in his eyes at all. "Why don't you give it a try and see if you can catch me? Little brat, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Cao Guan grit his teeth and shouted, "If you cooperate with us now, we won't treat you unfairly, but if we really capture you, we won't be polite to you. Come, if you can't catch me this time, just wait for your sect to be exterminated." Yang Kai's expression became sullen as he became quite impatient. These 3 people were like maggots clinging to his bones, making him extremely unhappy. Yang Kai secretly swore that when he grew up in the future, he would definitely kill these 3. I don't think you have that chance. Zhong Ao opened his hand and the handkerchief-like artifact suddenly produced an infinite suction force, causing the space around Yang Kai to suddenly become as sticky as a swamp. Space began to distort and distort, like the moon in the water or the flowers in a mirror, subtle and unreal. Zhong Ao's face filled with a look of absolute confidence, thinking that even if Yang Kai had great ability, he wouldn't be able to break free from his shackles. Yang Kai just smiled coldly, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he stood motionless in place. The suction force suddenly increased, and the handkerchief rapidly enlarged, wrapping around Kai Yang, completely wrapping him up. Cao Guan was overjoyed and was about to rush over while laughing. Zhong Ao snorted coldly and the handkerchief flew back. After carefully examining it, his face suddenly became gloomy. Yang Kai, who should have been wrapped in the handkerchief, was nowhere to be seen. There was no one inside. He seems to have run away long ago. Wizard Tribulation's eyes flickered like will-o'-the-wisps. At this time, he said coldly, "Run away?" Zhong Ao's eyes bulged. When did he run away? Probably when you made your move. Jie, 9 Heavens Divine Skills. I've finally seen it. This movement skill is extraordinarily fast. Wizard Tribulation turned his head and looked in one direction. Following his gaze, Zhong Ao and Cao Guan quickly released their divine senses and indeed noticed Yang Kai's aura more than a dozen miles away. At this moment, Yang Kai was fleeing into the distance at an extraordinary speed. His speed made Zhong Ao and Cao Guan's faces turn pale. Because this was already comparable to the speed of a Saint Realm Master. No wonder this little brat didn't panic at all. It turned out that he had something to rely on. Even if I have to chase you to the ends of the earth, I will catch you. Don't think you can escape from my grasp like this. Zhong Ao swore fiercely and disappeared in a flash. Cao Guan also hurriedly followed. Wizard Tribulation stood quietly in place for a while, his gloomy face revealing an interesting expression. He then turned into a green mist and disappeared like lightning. While running, Yang Kai spread out his divine sense and grasped the movements of the 3 people behind him. His face became more and more gloomy. He had never been chased like this before. Although he was not afraid of them at all, Yang Kai still felt very uncomfortable. While running, he secretly looked for an opportunity to get rid of them. But these 3 people were Saint Realm Masters after all. It was extremely difficult to completely get rid of them. As time passed, Yang Kai didn't know how far he had run. Although he occasionally had a chance to get rid of them for a while, it didn't take long for them to follow him like maggots in a tarsal bone. It was very annoying. Yang Kai didn't know what kind of method these 3 were using to accurately lock onto his position and chase after him. Yang Kai understood that he had underestimated the attraction of 9 Heavens Holy Land's inheritance to these 3 people. Just because he didn't care about obtaining a powerful inheritance at the cost of reducing one's lifespan didn't mean others wouldn't be envious. Originally, Yang Kai wanted to fly in the direction of Soaring Heaven Sect. As long as he returned to Soaring Heaven Sect, if these 3 dared to chase after him, he would make sure they never returned. But as he flew, Yang Kai lost his way and didn't know where Soaring Heaven Sect was, so he could only take one step at a time, his heart filled with anger. On this day, Yang Kai, who was flying, suddenly came to a stop and stared not far ahead. In front of him, an unusual aura was slowly converging and taking form, causing him to become vigilant. A moment later, this aura seemed to become denser and a green mist appeared out of thin air at a speed visible to the naked eye. The next moment, a man wearing a black robe and covered in a green aura strangely appeared. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he stared deeply at the newcomer, his eyes sharp as he shouted, "Wizard Tribulation?" He didn't know what kind of divine technique this Netherworld Sect's sect master had used to appear in front of him in an instant. This kind of mysterious method was beyond Yang Kai's understanding. However, when he appeared, he seemed to be very tired. His originally terrifying and gloomy face was deathly pale, and he was gasping for breath. The true qi in his body was also somewhat unstable. Yang Kai quickly released his divine sense, and after confirming that there was no danger within the range of his divine sense, he immediately shouted, "Soul Battle Hall." A white light flashed and a mysterious force suddenly burst out from Yang Kai's body. Before the wizard Tribulation could react, his soul avatar was pulled out. "Hey!" Wu Jie was shocked and called out, but in the next moment, his vision blurred, and by the time he could react, he found that his soul avatar had left his knowledge sea and was now in a vast white world with no sky or earth. Not far from him, Yang Kai's soul avatar was looking at him with an unfriendly expression. The Soul Battle Hall was a saint-grade artifact that Yang Kai and Enlinger had obtained in the ancient ruins at the bottom of the sea. Since obtaining it, this was the first time Yang Kai had used it. The function of this artifact was very special. It could forcibly pull out the enemy's soul avatar and force them to engage in a divine sense battle. However, there was also a drawback. When using it, Yang Kai's soul avatar would also enter it. His opponent was a first-order saint, and Yang Kai knew that his physical cultivation was no match for him, so he did not hesitate to summon the Soul Battle Hall, preparing to end this battle quickly. Yang Kai's eyes burned with fighting spirit. He wanted to know if his current spiritual energy could really compete with a Saint Realm Master. And this place was the best place to test it. Perceiving Yang Kai's intentions, the Wizard Tribulation quickly raised his hand. "Boy, don't be impulsive, I didn't come here to fight with you." Yang Kai frowned and sneered softly, "Now that things have gotten to this point, what's the point of saying such things? You don't believe me?" The Wizard Tribulation looked at Yang Kai with a funny smile. "If I really had any malicious intent towards you, I wouldn't have appeared in front of you in this way. You can feel it too, my strength consumption is huge, I'm not at my peak at all." Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and stared at him deeply, his divine sense constantly circulating around him, observing his reaction, wanting to see if he was telling the truth or not. Chapter 8:27. Wizard Tribulation's expression was calm. At this moment, he appeared very open and aboveboard. After a while, Yang Kai restrained his hostility and snorted, "If you're not here to fight me, then what are you doing in front of me? Naturally, I have something to discuss." Wizard Tribulation saw Yang Kai's attitude soften and his expression also relaxed, chuckling lightly. Yang Kai was surprised and frowned. "Are you sure you're not mistaken? You and I can't exist under the same sky. What do you want to discuss with me?" "I didn't say I wanted to exist under the same sky as you, Master Holy Master. This is just your one-sided opinion, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" Yang Kai looked at him coldly. "What I mean is, this wizard is willing to turn weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk with Master Holy Master. What do you think?" "You may be willing, but I'm not." Yang Kai slowly shook his head. "You've chased me for so many days, and now you've made things difficult for me. Do you think a few words can resolve this hatred? Aren't you too naive?" Wizard Tribulation wore a helpless expression. This wizard was forced to do this. Zhong Ao and Cao Guan joined forces to put pressure on me, so I had to do something. When we attacked Nine Heavens Holy Land last time, my Netherworld sect didn't send many people, nor did we participate, but many of our people were killed by the monster race. Serves them right. Yang Kai coldly snorted, but what Wizard Tribulation said wasn't a lie. During the last war, he really didn't see many people from Netherworld sect take action. "Ha ha." Wizard Tribulation laughed. "I know that Master Holy Master probably doesn't believe this wizard's words, but how should I put it? This wizard's Netherworld sect's motto is to take people's money and solve problems for them. I received a lot of things from Zhong Ao and Cao Guan, so naturally I had to follow their lead, but now, this wizard doesn't want to do so. Why?" Yang Kai stared at him intently. "Because I think Master Holy Master is a person who can achieve great things. Zhong Ao and Cao Guan thought that as long as they could capture you, they could obtain Nine Heavens Holy Land's inheritance and hope of breaking through to the Third Order Saint Realm. I can only say that they have been blinded by power." "You don't think so?" Yang Kai looked at Wizard Tribulation with interest. Wizard Tribulation shook his head. "If breaking through to the Third Saint Realm, your Nine Heavens Holy Land wouldn't only have one Holy Master, I'm afraid you would be invincible in this world. Although I don't know what kind of secrets are hidden in your inheritance, this Wu is clear that there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Every generation of your Holy Land's Holy Master has a short lifespan, and only one Holy Master can reach the Third Order Saint realm. It can be seen that although this inheritance is powerful, it also has many restrictions. Even if they can catch you and obtain your inheritance, the chances of success are very high. You see more clearly than they do. Yang Kai couldn't help thinking highly of Wizard Tribulation. This guy was dressed in a black robe and exuded a dark green aura, giving off a terrifying aura, but he was actually quite astute. Holy Master is too kind. Wizard Tribulation smiled and cupped his fists, his attitude modest. It is for this reason that this wizard does not want to be enemies with you. On top of that, you have also proven your strength. No transcendent has ever been able to survive so many days while being chased by 3 saints. If it weren't for Zhong-Ao's second order saint cultivation, I'm afraid we would have long since lost track of you. If things continued like this, even if we chased you until the end of time, we still wouldn't be able to catch you. But you blocked my path. Yang Kai's face went cold, slightly wary of Wizard Tribulation's unpredictable methods. That came at a huge price. Wizard Tribulation smiled bitterly and shook his head. I won't hide it from Holy Master. This wizard had a fortuitous encounter when he was young and obtained some unknown means that allowed him to tear space and travel thousands of miles in an instant. Tear space? Yang Kai's eyes narrowed. But by doing so, it is easy to get lost in a void crack and never find a way out. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't catch you, this wizard wouldn't have used such a risky method. Ever since I obtained it, I have only used it a total of 2 times, and each time I took a huge risk. Wizard Tribulation seemed to be very sincere, explaining his methods to Yang Kai without hiding anything. Is Holy Master interested? Wizard Tribulation said with a smile, if you are, this wizard can offer it to you with both hands. Yang Kai's expression changed and his eyes flashed. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't interested in this means of tearing space and traveling thousands of miles in an instant, but Wizard Tribulation's attitude was intriguing. What do you want to do? Yang Kai frowned and asked in a deep voice. Holy Master worries too much. This wizard really doesn't want to do anything, coming here to show you my attitude. Netherworld sect is willing to be friends with Holy Master forever. What do you think? Yang Kai stared at him coldly, keenly grasping the crux of his words. What he wanted was to be friends with him, not with 9 Heavens Holy Land. For him, Yang Kai was obviously more worthy of friendship than 9 Heavens Holy Land. What good is it for me? Yang Kai's expression relaxed. He could feel that Wizard Tribulation wasn't lying, because his soul avatar didn't show any unusual fluctuations. The means this wizard just mentioned, don't you want them? Wizard Tribulation smiled and said leisurely, this wizard doesn't have any other strong points, but I know how to adapt to the circumstances. That's why Netherworld sect has been able to develop to this day. Although Holy Master's current cultivation is not as good as this wizard's, I believe that within a few decades, you will be able to surpass everyone. I don't want to be dealt with by you when the time comes and my sect will be wiped out. Also, this wizard feels that if I were to fight you now, I wouldn't necessarily win. You really know how to adapt to the circumstances. Yang Kai's lips curled into an evil grin. He suddenly found that this Wizard Tribulation was quite interesting. Although he was a petty person, he was a very magnanimous one, and his eyesight was also quite good. In this soul battle hall, Yang Kai really didn't fear him. Netherworld sect used to be under the protection of your old Holy Master. I hope that in the future it will also be under your protection. This wizard doesn't ask for much, he only hopes that Netherworld sect can continue to prosper. I promise. Yang Kai nodded firmly. Many thanks. Wizard Tribulation cupped his fists solemnly. In the future, you will be very grateful for this wise decision of yours. Yang Kai chuckled meaningfully. Then Zhong-Ao and Cao Guan are probably going to be unlucky. Wizard Tribulation said meaningfully. He looked at Yang Kai and laughed loudly. After a while, Wizard Tribulation's expression became serious. He flicked his finger, and a white light shot straight towards Yang Kai. He said loudly, this is full of the process and memory of this wizard's fortuitous encounter. You can check it, and you will know that this wizard is telling the truth. Then I will accept it without hesitation. Yang Kai merged the light ball into his soul avatar. Although that method is amazing and sensational, this wizard still has to advise you not to use it unless it is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, it is very easy to get lost in the space crack. When this wizard first used it, as he said this, he seemed to recall something extremely terrifying. He shuddered and couldn't continue. Anyway, it is always right to be cautious. I will remember that. Yang Kai nodded. He didn't check the message that Wizard Tribulation sent him. There is something else I need to tell you. Wizard, this Zhong-Ao and Cao Guan probably won't give up on you in a short time, so I have to follow them for a while. But I think you won't mind. They can't catch up anyway. It doesn't matter. Yang Kai nodded. Then, this wizard will take his leave. After getting Yang Kai's promise, Wizard Tribulation seemed very satisfied. Yang Kai waved his hand and removed the restraints of the Hall of the Gods. In the next moment, the two soul avatars returned to their bodies. Wizard Tribulation nodded at Yang Kai. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he suddenly frowned and said, "By the way, have you seen the coffin-carrying man before?" Hearing this, Yang Kai's face turned cold, and his aura became fierce. Wizard Tribulation was shocked. "Don't be so agitated, I was just asking." "Why do you ask?" "Because I overheard Cao Guan and his subordinate, a cultivator called Yaro Di, talking about the coffin-carrying man and you. I thought you might have seen the coffin-carrying man before." "Yaro Di?" Yang Kai frowned and suddenly remembered this person. He had seen him outside the city of Raging Fire. He asked anxiously, "What else did they say?" Wizard Tribulation shook his head. "I didn't hear them clearly. They were very secretive." He seemed to be talking to himself. "It is said that the coffin-carrying man's hiding place hides an amazing treasure. Whoever can solve the secret of the coffin-carrying man will have the power to dominate the world." "Well, I don't know if the rumor is true or not." "Hee, you don't have to worry about it. It was just a casual remark. Goodbye." After saying this, he walked away in a carefree manner. Staring at his disappearing back, Yang Kai's brow furrowed. As the saying goes, there is no smoke without fire. Although this rumor about the coffin-carrying man wasn't completely true, it wasn't completely false. Behind the coffin-carrying man, there was indeed a power that could allow one to dominate the world, but this power was not something anyone could obtain. Wizard Tribulation seemed to have mentioned this unintentionally, but it was obvious he wanted Yang Kai to be careful not to reveal his relationship with the coffin-carrying man. This guy, his thoughts were quite heavy. Moreover, he was also the kind of person who was willing to pay any price. Just because he was optimistic about Yang Kai's future, he gave up on becoming his enemy. From a certain point of view, he was quite farsighted. Shaking his head, Yang Kai didn't think too much about it, turned around, and flew off in a certain direction. Zhong-Ao and Cao Guan were still chasing after him. The former was a second-order saint, so with his divine sense probing, Yang Kai was helpless and couldn't hide his aura. A month passed in a flash, and it wasn't until now that Yang Kai faintly felt that he seemed to have escaped from Zhong-Ao's pursuit. After being chased for so long, not only was Yang Kai depressed, Zhong-Ao and the others were also depressed and probably didn't have the patience to continue chasing. After wandering around for a few more days and confirming that Zhong-Ao and the others had disappeared, Yang Kai secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although he wasn't worried about being caught, being in this kind of situation for so long was quite uncomfortable. In front of him was a lush, rolling mountain range with extremely rich world energy aura. Yang Kai spread out his divine sense to investigate his surroundings, but apart from occasionally finding traces of monster beast activity, he didn't see any trace of people. Yang Kai's spirit shook and he immediately flew towards the mountain peak. Chapter 828. Lush green mountains, filled with the fragrance of flowers and birds, the scenery was pleasant and peaceful. Deep inside the mountain, inside a natural cave, Yang Kai sat cross-legged as a stream of memories flashed through his mind. Yang Kai's divine sense swept through the scenes and characters in this memory as if he had experienced them himself. This stream of memories was the one Wizard Tribulation had passed to him, the one of his fortuitous encounters. After getting rid of Zhong-Ao and the others, Yang Kai was no longer in a hurry to return to Soaring Heaven sect, so he simply found a place nearby to study the mysterious method of tearing space. He was very interested in this matter. If he could really master this method, even if he encountered an enemy he couldn't defeat in the future, he could easily escape. However, from the advice Wizard Tribulation gave him before he left, using this method was accompanied by great risks. Calming his mind, Yang Kai was able to clearly see the scenes in the stream of memory. In just 1 or 2 days, Yang Kai had already understood everything. Laughing involuntarily, Yang Kai thought to himself that no wonder Wizard Tribulation was so generous as to share his fortuitous encounter with him. It turned out that the restrictions on using this method were also enormous. Originally, Yang Kai suspected that Wizard Tribulation was up to no good, but after understanding everything, he suddenly realized that even if he revealed this method to Yang Kai, it wouldn't be a problem. This magical method was mysterious, but in fact, it was extremely simple. It was like a martial skill, but also like a soul skill, because when using it, it consumed both yuan qi and spiritual energy, and the amount of spiritual energy consumed was unimaginable. Even someone as strong as Wizard Tribulation would be dispirited for a long time after using this method. Yang Kai was just a second-order transcendent, so in Wizard Tribulation's opinion, even if he comprehended this method, he wouldn't be able to use it in a short time. Unfortunately, he was wrong. Yang Kai's yuan qi and spiritual energy were many times stronger than he had estimated, more than enough to support this method. When using this method, the more yuan qi and spiritual energy one consumed, the further one could tear space to reach. Yang Kai immersed himself in the divine technique. It was rumored that all the void corridors and mysterious small worlds on this continent were created during the Great War between the masters of the ancient era. Although the rumors were not necessarily true, Yang Kai also realized that in that era, the cultivator on the mainland had extraordinary abilities. Tearing apart space and creating space might not be a difficult task for them. However, because too much time had passed, martial arts had gradually declined, and this kind of ability was gradually lost. Perhaps, in today's world, the Third-Order Saint Realm Masters could touch upon this threshold and teleport several dozen kilometers or even several dozen kilometers, but they absolutely couldn't tear space and travel 1,000 kilometers in an instant. This was something only the Void Corridor could do. As time passed, the sun set and the moon rose. Yang Kai sat in the stone cave for about half a month, secretly feeling that he had thoroughly comprehended this divine technique and couldn't help but have an eager expression on his face. Although Wizard Tribulation had warned him to be cautious, Yang Kai was not willing to give up now that he had obtained such a method. Only by personally experiencing it could he know whether he could really tear space and prove whether Wizard Tribulation was exaggerating or not. Otherwise, when he really encountered danger in the future, it would be too late to pin his hopes on this method. After contemplating for a long time, Yang Kai stood up. His yuan qi surged and his spiritual energy burst out at the same time. The two forces merged into one, and a subtle change occurred between them as they suddenly bombarded the void. In front of Yang Kai, layer after layer of ripples appeared, as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake. As the ripples spread, Yang Kai continued to release his yuan qi and spiritual energy, his mind following the spread of the ripples. After a long time, his eyes suddenly lit up. In this state of mind, he found that the space in front of him seemed to be somewhat different from usual. When he wanted to examine it more carefully, these traces flashed and disappeared. Gently taking a deep breath, Yang Kai calmly withdrew his true qi and spiritual energy from his body and began adjusting his breathing for the time being. Even though he had thoroughly understood this divine ability, when it came to actually putting it into practice, he still found it difficult. He really couldn't understand how the masters of the ancient era and the ancient era created void corridors and mysterious small worlds, and these were inadvertently created when they were fighting. Compared to them, Yang Kai felt that he was still too weak. Perhaps at this moment, in front of those masters, he was just an ant. Half a day later, after his essence, qi, and soul had been restored to their peak, Yang Kai tried again. His yuan qi and spiritual energy burst out at the same time, searching for a flaw that could allow him to break through the seal of space as the ripples spread out. This time, Yang Kai's feeling was much clearer, and he couldn't help feeling happy as he focused even more. Gradually, the world in front of him began to change. The space around him began to distort strangely, like a transparent cloth that had been folded by someone. At this point, a unique aura leaked out. Yang Kai's spirit shook, and without hesitation, he condensed his yuan qi and spiritual energy into a sharp attack and blasted towards the folded space. *KA. As if a door had been opened, a dark crack appeared in front of Yang Kai. Looking around, there was nothing but emptiness on the other side of this crack, and it was impossible to tell what kind of dangers were hidden on the other side of this crack. The world energy aura throughout Qingluan Mountain suddenly became chaotic, and an unimaginable attractive force came from the crack, madly swallowing the nearby world energy, forming a violent storm in an instant. As the world energy poured in, the opened crack quickly closed. Before Yang Kai had time to examine it carefully, a dark light flashed and the crack disappeared without a trace. The distorted space was restored, and his vision became clear again. Yang Kai couldn't help but frown. He clearly knew that he had displayed half of this divine technique, and as long as he could expand this crack a little more, he would be able to enter and explore it. Gently exhaling, Yang Kai checked his own condition and was surprised by what he found. The Dantian had suddenly lost 3 or 4 drops of yang liquid, and the energy in his knowledge sea had also been reduced by about half. Secretly stunned, Yang Kai understood how great the price to pay to display this divine technique was. Even if he was at his peak, he could only use it twice at most before his spiritual energy ran out. No wonder when wizard tribulation appeared in front of him before, he looked like an arrow at the end of its flight. Even with his current cultivation, it was quite difficult for him to display this technique. Quickly dipping a drop of myriad drug liquid into his mouth, Yang Kai took some pills to supplement his spiritual energy, quickly restoring his spiritual energy. An hour later, Yang Kai was full of energy again. After repeated failures and experiments, the accumulated experience was extremely valuable. 3 days later, Yang Kai, who had just recovered, opened his eyes and was brimming with confidence. He believed that this time he would definitely succeed in tearing space. Yuan Qi and spiritual energy spread out in a leisurely manner, not sparing any effort like when he first began. The two forces converged in one place and bombarded the void. The layers of ripples spread out in a rhythmic manner, rising and falling one after another. The space in front of him once again became distorted and wrinkled. Focusing on the fold, Yang Kai burst out with his own strength in an instant. A dark crack appeared and, as if pulled by a pair of invisible hands, suddenly expanded. The crack became the source of the pulling force, crazily swallowing the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's energy. Yang Kai didn't hesitate and directly rushed into the crack. After he entered, the dark crack in space also disappeared. The familiar feeling of dizziness came, but Yang Kai's expression was excited. Not only did he not feel the slightest fear, he instead felt infinite anticipation. Just as he had expected, the crack he created by tearing space was basically equivalent to the entrance to a void corridor, because the feeling the two gave off was too similar. When entering a void corridor, there would also be this subtle feeling of dizziness, but it wouldn't last long before leaving the void corridor and arriving at another place. But this time, the feeling of dizziness persisted, and Yang Kai himself seemed to have fallen into a bottomless abyss, falling down continuously, with no end in sight. Streams of spatial turbulence surged around him, mixed with a terrifying destructive power. Yang Kai was secretly shocked, his mind focused, moving back and forth, avoiding these void turbulences and not letting them hurt him. These void turbulences were not something he could deal with at the moment. They were stronger than the power of the star field, and once he was involved, it was very likely that he would be completely lost. This was also the reason why the wizard tribulation asked Yang Kai to be cautious. When that guy first used it, he probably suffered a big loss here, so he still had a lingering fear. Yang Kai was like a lone boat sailing on a stormy sea. Although he was in danger of being overturned at any time, he was always calm and composed, avoiding the void's turbulent currents while releasing his divine sense to investigate the hidden patterns of the void. He was not in a hurry to leave this place, but instead wanted to thoroughly understand how to tear space. He faintly felt that all the secrets were hidden in this seemingly chaotic void turbulence. As long as he could figure out the mysteries here, he would be able to tear space at will in the future without worrying about any danger. Time passed little by little as Yang Kai divided his attention, his expression relaxed. It wasn't until the void turbulence suddenly became chaotic and violent that Yang Kai's expression changed, and he quickly condensed his yuan qi and spiritual energy, tearing a crack in space in front of him again and leaping out. In a flash, Yang Kai returned to Tongxian realm. Everywhere he looked, the world was bright, the sun was high in the sky, and he seemed to be above the clouds. Below his feet was a thick, cotton-like cloud, thick and dignified. The scenery was wonderful, and Yang Kai felt relaxed, allowing himself to fall. Only when he was about to hit the ground did he circulate his yuan qi to stabilize himself. Chapter 829. 2 months passed in a flash. During this time, Yang Kai had been practicing and familiarizing himself with this method of tearing space. Basically, he spent most of his time in the torn void, quietly perceiving the turbulent streams of space, searching for hidden mysteries. When his spiritual energy was exhausted, he would sit down to restore himself, and when his spiritual energy was restored, he would continue, repeating this cycle over and over again. Now, he could easily tear space and travel through the void to reach another part of the world. However, even if he used his full strength, the distance he could travel was still a bit short, only able to travel about 300 to 400 kilometers in an instant. Moreover, he had no way to grasp the direction, so when returning from the void, he could only randomly appear in a certain place. Every time he used this method, Yang Kai was extremely careful and cautious. Because he was in the middle of the turbulent void, he couldn't afford to be the slightest bit careless. The chaotic energy streams were too strange and difficult to guard against. On several occasions, Yang Kai was almost caught up in them, and if he hadn't run fast enough, he likely would never have been able to escape. His tyrannical and tough physique also played a crucial role at this time. Just like in the starfield, the turbulent void streams were extremely harmful to his physique. Yang Kai estimated that even if Wizard Tribulation used this method, he would need to summon an artifact to protect himself in order to ensure his safety. On this day, Yang Kai returned from the void and appeared in a grey mountain valley. He couldn't grasp where he had appeared, so every time he returned, he couldn't help being a bit vigilant, fearing he would fall into some dangerous place. This time was the same. As soon as he appeared, Yang Kai immediately restrained his aura and quietly released his divine sense to investigate his surroundings. After a while, Yang Kai looked surprised. He found that at the entrance of the mountain valley, there were at least 100 people gathered there, led by a First-Order Saint Realm Master. The rest of the people were a mix of cultivators. All of them were standing solemnly at the entrance of the valley, but Yang Kai didn't know what they were doing. Yang Kai immediately realized that he had inadvertently entered the territory of some great force, but since there was only one First-Order Saint here, he wasn't worried. He found a place nearby and sat down cross-legged. Then, he concealed himself and began to recover the energy he had consumed. Yang Kai did not have the intention to inquire about the other factions. However, after half a day of recovery, he was surprised to find that the group of people at the entrance of the valley seemed to be carrying out some kind of sacred ceremony. Everyone looked very serious, and the weaker cultivator seemed to be very excited and looking forward to it. Yang Kai couldn't help but feel curious, but he didn't rush to leave immediately. Instead, he continued to stay where he was. After half a day, the ceremony finally came to an end and a series of impassioned chants rang out as the Saint Realm Master muttered some unintelligible words, giving off a profound aura. A moment later, a cultivator whose strength was only at the peak of Yuan Qi state strode into the valley. The peak of Yuan Qi realm was not considered weak in the central capital, but in Tongxian realm, those with such strength were either mediocre or very young. The person who walked into the valley belonged to the latter. Shrouded in the grey fog, he walked straight past Yang Kai. Yang Kai could clearly see that he was just a 14 or 15-year-old boy. Just like himself many years ago, his immature face was filled with an unyielding desire for strength as he excitedly stepped forward. Yang Kai couldn't help laughing. Continuing to stay where he was, Yang Kai locked his divine sense onto this young man, wanting to see what he was doing. The valley was not too wide, but it was long and winding and was very deep. The young man walked through the fog, his steps steady and his eyes steady. But before he could walk 1,000 meters, from the depths of the valley, a gentle push suddenly appeared and struck him head-on. The young man could not resist at all, and was pushed back by this force, stumbling backwards. After he regained his balance, a look of frustration appeared on his face. Yang Kai, on the other hand, frowned because when this push appeared, he suddenly felt a tingling sensation on his back, as if something was crawling behind him. When he carefully examined himself, he found that there was nothing on his back at all. Slowly shaking his head, Yang Kai showed a puzzled look. After the young man was pushed back, he lowered his head and walked back, a short time later exiting the valley. The people waiting at the entrance of the valley saw his appearance and immediately understood. The First Order Saint Realm Master didn't even spare him a glance before shouting, "Next!" Another cultivator about the same age as the young man stepped forward. Just like the young man before him, after walking a short distance, he was pushed back by a gentle force and could only turn around and leave in frustration. One by one, the young men walked in and returned helplessly one after another. The Saint Realm Master in charge of this place also appeared somewhat gloomy. After observing for a long time, Yang Kai finally understood what was going on. Although he didn't know what kind of ceremony these people were performing or what they were doing, it should be some kind of test. Unfortunately, none of those young youths passed the test, and they were all stopped at a distance of several hundred to 1,000 feet. Of the hundreds of young men, the number of people who failed to enter became fewer and fewer, each of them sighing in disappointment. Yang Kai quietly glanced towards the depths of the valley, his expression dignified. Every time that gentle force appeared and pushed the young man back, he would feel a tingling sensation on his back. At first, Yang Kai thought it was just his imagination, that some master was hiding behind him and playing with him. But after so many times, after careful observation, he discovered that things were not as he thought. The tingling sensation on his back, as if something was crawling over him, was clearly caused by the golden dragon tattoo on his back. Listening carefully, Yang Kai could even hear a subtle dragon roar. The golden dragon tattoo on his back and the ice phoenix tattoo on Su Yang's back were both left behind by the yin-yang joyous unification art. What does it have to do with this place? Thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai walked out of his hiding place and stepped into the valley. Spreading out his divine sense, Yang Kai's expression became one of surprise a moment later. Although he had been secretly observing the movements of the group of people at the entrance of the valley, he had not carefully investigated the terrain here. It was only now that he discovered that this winding valley, if looked down from the sky, was like a giant dragon crouching here. At the mouth of the valley was the dragon's tail, and the dragon's head was the deepest part of the valley. There were several forks in the valley that were shaped like dragon claws. The deeper Yang Kai walked, the clearer the tingling sensation on his back became and the faster the golden dragon tattoo moved. Yang Kai became more and more certain that the inheritance he and Su Yang obtained was related to this place. How could it be so coincidental? Yang Kai secretly frowned. He had just been experimenting with tearing space and had inadvertently come to this place. If that was the case, then which force this place belonged to, Yang Kai could vaguely guess. At the mouth of the valley, the Saint Realm Master's brow furrowed as he weakly called out, "Next." A delicate-looking young man stepped out of the ranks and walked into the valley. After he disappeared into the fog, the Saint Realm cultivator sighed slightly. "Palace Master, this is the last person," a transcendent realm cultivator next to him said. The man called Palace Master nodded slightly. "I know, I'm afraid there's no hope this time." The transcendent realm cultivator frowned. 3 years of searching for 100 young men, yet after so many years there still hasn't been any improvement. "Palace Master, is our method wrong?" The Palace Master glanced at him. "What are you suspecting?" "Subordinate doesn't dare, but, no buts." Palace Master shouted, "Although we are not strong now, remember, a long, long time ago, we were one of the most powerful forces in the world. Anyone who saw us had to treat us with respect. No one dared to provoke our disciples when they walked the continent." "Yes." The Palace Master's expression became gloomy as he sighed. "The ancestors recorded these things in the ancient books so that we would never forget the prosperity and strength of the past. Unfortunately, After so many years, no one has passed the test of Dragon Valley, unable to recreate the glory of our ancestors and the prosperity of our sect. Palace Master, in the past the Transcendent Realm Cultivator asked curiously. The Palace Master shook his head sadly. I didn't, but fortunately, I broke through to the Saint Realm, otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to protect this place. A group of youths who were not familiar with the ways of the world listened to the conversation between the two, their eyes filled with curiosity. Right at this moment, the grey mist that enshrouded the Dragon Valley all year round suddenly became chaotic, and the entire Dragon Valley tremored violently. Everyone's expressions changed drastically, and they had no idea what was going on. Those youths were even more flustered, their faces going pale. A resounding dragon roar suddenly resounded from the depths of the valley. A golden radiance soared into the sky from that direction. It was as dazzling as a golden sun. The Palace Master's eyes bulged as he stared at this golden light. The Transcendent Realm Cultivator next to him also did the same, his expression filled with shock and horror. The golden light twisted and twisted, and after a moment, it formed a dragon head filled with endless majesty that looked down indifferently and arrogantly. Under its gaze, everyone couldn't help feeling a sense of insignificance. Even a character as strong as the Palace Master couldn't help trembling as he pointed to the golden dragon head and shouted, "It's here, it's here. It's exactly the same as recorded in the ancient books. The golden dragon head has appeared, the Dragon Emperor has returned. Palace Master, could it be? Someone passed the test?" The Transcendent Realm Cultivator asked dumbfounded. The Palace Master was so excited that he couldn't restrain himself, tears streaming down his face. Hearing these words, he didn't respond at all, simply staring at the golden dragon head for a moment before suddenly asking, "The young man who just went in, what's his name, and where is he from?" Chapter 830. In the deepest part of the mountain valley, Yang Kai stared at the golden dragon head that had suddenly appeared, his mood fluctuating. The numbing sensation on his back had reached its peak, and accompanied by a loud dragon roar, the brand golden dragon pattern on his back flew straight towards the dragon head in the sky. For a time, the golden light was so bright that it was almost impossible to open one's eyes. After everything stabilized, Yang Kai discovered that he was now in a world of golden light, surrounded by a massive amount of energy. A golden dragon, only a few meters long, was constantly swallowing this energy. Yang Kai sensed his surroundings and immediately relaxed. This golden dragon, which was only a few feet long, had its own aura. It should be the pattern that had always been imprinted on its back. However, for some reason, it had manifested at this moment. Moreover, as it devoured the golden energy, its body also underwent some subtle changes. It was growing bigger and bigger, and its aura also became denser and more distant. Behind him, there was the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Yang Kai turned his head and was surprised to find a 14 or 15-year-old boy lying on the ground, his face deathly pale as he stared at him in horror. Yang Kai frowned. Just now, all of his attention had been attracted by the changes in this place, so he hadn't even noticed when this boy had been involved. This boy was only Yuan Qi Boundary 7th stage, so in front of Yang Kai, he was no different from an ant. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai slowly shook his head. He didn't know what was going on here, but his divine sense was trapped in this golden energy sea, so he couldn't detect the situation outside. Moreover, looking around, he couldn't see anything. At this moment, there was only him and this boy. Smiling slightly, Yang Kai stepped forward towards him. He had many speculations in his heart, so he could confirm them with this boy. As Yang Kai approached, the boy panicked to the extreme, and before Yang Kai could get close, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. "Is that so?" Yang Kai was stunned. Although he wasn't very handsome, he wasn't the kind of person who looked fierce, so this boy's courage was a bit too small. With no other choice, Yang Kai could only sit down cross-legged and wait quietly while checking his surroundings. This place was completely covered by a sea of golden energy, and the golden dragon symbol on his back was still eating. Yang Kai tried to see if he could break through the seal of the energy, but he couldn't. This golden barrier was impregnable, and Yang Kai estimated that even if he entered his devil transformation, he wouldn't be able to break through it. He might be able to leave this place by tearing through space, but the golden dragon pattern behind him was still here. Yang Kai couldn't summon it back, so he could only make the best of it. In any case, it was unlikely for the people outside to come in. He also investigated the young man's situation and was surprised to find that the attribute of the young man's cultivation method was the same as his own. It was also of the yang attribute. Although the yuan qi flowing in his body was not very rich, it was still quite good. At least, it was not too bad at his level of cultivation. After waiting for half a day, the young man slowly woke up. Opening his eyes, for a moment he didn't seem to understand the situation in front of him. When he saw Yang Kai sitting in front of him and looking at him with a smile, his expression changed. He hurriedly crawled back a bit and looked at him vigilantly. His eyes were full of fear. Yang Kai chuckled, "Don't be afraid, I just have something to ask you." The young man was still vigilant, putting on a posture like a rabbit fighting an eagle, the yuan qi in his body surging. Yang Kai couldn't help showing a look of approval. The young man scratched his head awkwardly. "Senior, please don't take offense, this junior was just thinking too much." "Right, this junior is Sun Yu, a disciple of Dragon Phoenix Palace. My surname is Yang." Yang Kai smiled and nodded. "Greetings, Senior Yang." Sun Yu's expression was filled with excitement, as if he had really met a senior from his sect, his attitude respectful. It wasn't surprising that he would think so. Being able to open Dragon Valley's barrier meant he had some kind of relationship with Dragon Phoenix Palace. On top of that, Yang Kai had personally admitted it, so Sun Yu naturally felt relieved. Since they were family, there was no need for him to be on edge. "Come, sit down, I still have a lot of questions to ask you," Yang Kai said amiably. "Senior Yang, please feel free to ask, this disciple will answer to the best of his ability." Sun Yu nodded quickly. After chatting with Sun Yu for a while, Yang Kai gradually understood Dragon Phoenix Palace's strength. It wasn't too strong, but it wasn't too weak either. There was at least one Saint Realm Master in the sect, the one Yang Kai had sensed at the entrance to the mountain valley, Palace Master Chen Ju. Although he was only a First Order Saint, he was still able to barely guarantee the safety of Dragon Phoenix Palace. The trial of Dragon Valley was held once every 3 years, and these youths were all selected by Dragon Phoenix Palace from the nearby great forces during this time. There were also some who were Dragon Phoenix Palace's own disciples, such as Sun Yu. Those who were selected from Dragon Phoenix Palace's great forces and small families would have to return to their original home if they failed to pass the trial. Every Palace Master of Dragon Phoenix Palace would continue to host this kind of test in hopes that one day a disciple would be lucky enough to pass it and restore Dragon Phoenix Palace's glory. Unfortunately, over the countless years, many Palace Masters had passed through, but no one had ever succeeded, leading to everyone in Dragon Phoenix Palace, except for the Palace Master, believing that there was no mystery in Dragon Valley. It wasn't until today that Yang Kai inadvertently arrived here that they finally saw hope. Sun Yu suddenly slapped his thigh and exclaimed, "Damn, Palace Master and the others must think I opened the barrier and passed Dragon Valley's trial. Let them think so, what does it matter?" Yang Kai smiled lightly. "But, this has nothing to do with me. I was just walking inside the mountain valley when I was pulled here by a strange force. No, I have to go out and inform Palace Master and the others." "You can't get out." Yang Kai shook his head and glanced around. "Not only you, but I also can't get out before this golden energy is completely swallowed up." "No way." Sun Yu's face went pale. "Then what do we do?" "Wait." Yang Kai replied concisely, not showing the slightest hint of nervousness. Seeing him so calm, Sun Yu also seemed to be affected by his calm demeanor and felt relieved, sitting back down in front of Yang Kai. After chatting for a while, Yang Kai learned from Sun Yu that Dragon Valley hid the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. In addition to Dragon Valley, Dragon Phoenix Palace also had another restricted area, the Phoenix Nest. Hidden inside this Phoenix Nest was the Phoenix Empress inheritance. Anyone who passed Dragon Valley's trial could find a woman they liked and have her inherit the position of Phoenix Empress. Dragon Emperor and Phoenix Empress were the titles of the two most powerful masters in Dragon Phoenix Palace many years ago. With these two, Dragon Phoenix Palace was one of the most powerful forces in the world. Today, the sect master of Dragon Phoenix Palace only dared to call himself Palace Master. Yang Kai's expression changed as he couldn't help becoming interested in this phoenix nest. It should be where Su Yang had gone. For disciples like us who are selected, even if we don't pass Dragon Valley's trial, Palace Master will grant us a secret art. As long as we can find a suitable woman, our cultivation speed won't be too slow. A dual cultivation secret art? Yang Kai asked. Sun Yu blushed and nodded slightly. Have you found a woman you like? Sun Yu shook his head, his face turning even redder. But there are many beautiful women in the palace. We can choose at will, but once we do, we will never leave. Yang Kai's expression changed. Only those who had cultivated a dual cultivation secret art would understand what it meant to never leave. Sun Yu's words resonated with Yang Kai's heart and his eyes couldn't help becoming warmer. Chapter 831. Outside Dragon Valley, all the elders of Dragon Phoenix Palace gathered together and stared towards the bottom of the valley in excitement. Palace Master Chen Ju was the most excited of all, a big grin on his face. Dragon Phoenix Palace was somewhat different from other great forces because it cultivated a dual cultivation secret art, so basically every master had a life partner. At this moment, Palace Master Chen Ju's partner, Yu Tingyi, was also standing beside him, gently holding his hand, but still unable to suppress the trembling of his stalwart body. Yu Tingyi was a middle-aged beauty with a voluptuous figure, but because her aptitude was slightly lacking, her cultivation was behind Chen Ju, currently only a third-order transcendent. Seeing her husband like this, she couldn't help smiling. Good, isn't it just the reappearance of the inheritance? Is there really a need to be so excited? Chen Ju took a deep breath. You don't understand. Every palace master has succeeded the reappearance of the inheritance after countless years, but now it has finally appeared in my hands. How could I not be excited? The reappearance of the inheritance means that my Dragon Phoenix Palace will have a Dragon Emperor and Phoenix Empress in the future. As long as we have these two, we can restore our former prosperity. Saying so, he shouted, Xiao Ling hasn't come back yet? Just as he was about to ask, a figure flew over and before this person arrived, a voice called out, Palace Master, subordinate has returned. It was the transcendent who had followed Chen Ju before. Chen Ju hurriedly stepped forward and asked, Have you inquired? Where did this disciple come from? Is he a disciple of my Dragon Phoenix Palace or from one of its subordinate forces? Reporting to Palace Master, that young man is called Sun Yu and is a member of my Dragon Phoenix Palace. He has lived here since childhood, Xiao Ling replied quickly. Hearing this, Chen Ju couldn't help smiling and nodding. Good, that would be for the best. Although it didn't matter if Sun Yu was from one of the subordinate forces, if he had grown up in Dragon Phoenix Palace from a young age, his feelings for the sect would definitely be extremely deep, eliminating some of Chen Ju's worries. Who is the teacher who taught him? It's Elder Ling Jian, Xiao Ling answered as he stepped aside. Elder Ling has arrived. Chen Ju raised his eyes and saw Ling Jian walking over with a big grin on his face. When the two sides met, after exchanging pleasantries, Chen Ju quickly said, Elder Ling has worked hard, it seems you've raised a good disciple. Ling Jian's old face blossomed into a smile. Although he was an elder, Ling Jian was only a first-order transcendent. Even among the elders, he was one of the weakest, so he wasn't valued at all. Coupled with his advanced age, after so many years, he had only held the title of elder in name and enjoyed the rest of his life. Chen Ju's sect today. The sect's inheritance's disciple had Yang's sect. Since his disciple had obtained the inheritance, as the master in charge of teaching, his status would naturally rise as well, and his value would multiply. Sects masters lords sect disciples sect realm sect s. Ling Jian couldn't get used to it for a while, but it was quite useful. A group of Dragon Phoenix Palace's elders watched from the sidelines, their eyes red with envy, wondering why the one who opened the Dragon Emperor's inheritance wasn't their own disciple. If one of their disciples had such an opportunity, the one chatting with the sect master right now would be them. The scene was extremely lively as Chen Ju constantly asked about Sun Yu's situation and information. Ling Jian also told him everything he knew about Sun Yu, telling him all the trivial things that had happened to Sun Yu since childhood. When Chen Ju heard all of this, not only did he not feel bored, he even praised Sun Yu as a good seedling, saying that in the future, Dragon Phoenix Palace would have to rely on him and Ling Jian. Ling Jian was greatly relieved, thinking that even if he died now, he would have no regrets. The lively scene continued for many days without subsiding. Every day, many people would gather outside Dragon Valley and stare towards the bottom, but they couldn't see anything. Dragon Valley was filled with fog and didn't see the sun all year round, but now, it was shrouded in a golden light and an amazing energy fluctuation was radiating from it, so no one dared to approach. Palace Master Chen Ju also took some protective measures, dispatching all of Dragon Phoenix Palace's elites to surround Dragon Valley in order to prevent Sun Yu from being disturbed while he was accepting the inheritance. Time passed day by day and everyone was looking forward to seeing Sun Yu emerge from Dragon Valley, causing them to become somewhat anxious. Inside the Golden Energy Sea, Yang Kai fiddled with his small pill furnace, adding various herbs to it, refining pills with his conflagrated knowledge sea, refining his skills and understanding of alchemy. Now, he was only one step away from becoming a saint-grade alchemist, so while waiting here, Yang Kai began performing alchemy. Sun Yu, who had been involved in this storm, seemed to be a diligent person. After spending 2 or 3 days with Yang Kai and learning that he couldn't leave for the time being, Sun Yu sat down cross-legged and began cultivating. The golden energy here was so rich that it was almost tangible, but surprisingly, it wasn't of the yang attribute and instead gave off a sacred and majestic feeling. Yang Kai couldn't tell what kind of energy this was, but he had no problem cultivating. Moreover, the power contained in this golden energy was extremely terrifying. As long as Sun Yu could absorb even a little of it, it would be enough for him to use for the rest of his life. One cultivated while the other performed alchemy, the two had nothing to do with each other, so the days passed by quickly. Yang Kai also didn't need to worry about the materials he needed for alchemy. When he left Nine Heavens Holy Land, he had swept through the Nine Heavens Holy Land storehouse and stored all the materials inside into his black book space, enough for him to spend for quite some time. On this day, Yang Kai had just finished refining a saint-grade pill when he found that Sun Yu had finished his cultivation and was sitting nearby, staring intently at the movements of his hands. "Did you understand?" Yang Kai smiled lightly. Sun Yu shook his head honestly and said suspiciously, "Senior, your alchemy technique is very strange, completely different from anyone I've ever seen before." "What's strange about it?" Yang Kai asked. "You don't use Yuan Qi. I've seen people perform alchemy before, and when they use Yuan Qi, the consumption rate is extremely fast, but your alchemy doesn't seem to use Yuan Qi at all. On top of that, your speed is much faster than those people. What grade pill did you refine?" "A mysterious grade pill?" Hearing this, Yang Kai's face went black, secretly thinking that this brat didn't know what was good for him. He had finally managed to refine a saint-grade pill, but in this brat's eyes, it was just a worthless mysterious grade pill. Sun Yu observed Yang Kai's expression and asked in amazement, "Could it be a spirit-grade pill?" "It could be." Yang Kai didn't want to explain too much to him. "Senior is truly amazing. A spirit-grade pill only took you 1 to 2 hours to refine. If the alchemists in my mansion were to know of this, I'm afraid they would die of shame." Even though Yang Kai was used to seeing great storms and waves, hearing Sun Yu's words, he couldn't help feeling a little proud, not to mention this brat still had a serious look of worship on his face. "Why aren't you cultivating?" Yang Kai put away the saint-grade pill and asked. Sun Yu said with a bitter expression, "I can't absorb the energy here. I don't know why it's like this, and I've also used up the 2 crystal stones I carry with me." Yang Kai nodded slightly, knowing that what he said was true. Although the energy here could be used for cultivation, Sun Yu's strength was still too low. Looking at him with a frown, Yang Kai suddenly asked, "Do you crave strength?" Sun Yu was stunned for a moment before nodding solemnly. "Why do you crave strength?" "I'm a man." Sun Yu said matter-of-factly, "Of course I crave strength, and I will definitely meet a woman I like in the future. Without strength, how can I protect her?" Yang Kai laughed. "Well said. All men crave strength without any reason." Sun Yu scratched his head awkwardly as he stared at Yang Kai in confusion. Yang Kai suddenly became serious and quickly said, "Boy, how about I make a deal with you? Senior is too kind. If Senior has something to say, just say it. As long as Sun Yu can do it, he will definitely help," Sun Yu said awkwardly. Yang Kai shook his head and stubbornly insisted, "I just want to make a deal with you." Sun Yu's face also became serious as he realized that Yang Kai might want to talk to him about something important, so after hesitating for a moment, he nodded, "Many thanks for Senior's kindness, please speak. If you want strength, I can give it to you." Yang Kai grinned, "But you have to promise me one thing. When we leave here one day and you return to Dragon Phoenix Palace, don't reveal anything about me." Sun Yu was stunned. "Why?" "No reason," Yang Kai shook his head, "just listen to me. But Senior, since you were able to open the barrier here, you must have some kind of relationship with the sect, and the Palace Master has been looking forward to this all his life. I don't want them to know about me for the time being, but when there is time in the future, I may go see your Palace Master," Yang Kai replied casually. Yang Kai had yet to clean up the mess in Nine Heaven's Holy Land, so if he became involved with Dragon Phoenix Palace, he would likely never be able to live in peace again. However, since the Phoenix Empress inheritance was hidden in this phoenix nest, Yang Kai would definitely bring Su Yang here again in the future. The people from Dragon Phoenix Palace must now think that Sun Yu had opened the barrier here and improved his strength, making it easier for them to conceal the truth. Of course, that was only if Sun Yu didn't reveal anything. Regarding this little brat, Yang Kai still had some appreciation for him and couldn't bear to kill him to silence him. With the resources in Yang Kai's hands, if he wanted to cultivate someone, it would be extremely simple. Even if Sun Yu's aptitude was mediocre, Yang Kai would be able to refine him, not to mention, the attribute of this boy's secret art was the same as Yang Kai's, which was even rarer. As long as Sun Yu nodded, he would be able to obtain an unimaginable opportunity. After thinking about it for a long time, Sun Yu said, "Although I don't know why Senior wants to do this, I'm sure you have your reasons. Senior won't do any harm to our Dragon Phoenix Palace, right?" "Of course not," Yang Kai laughed. "Good, then I promise I won't reveal your existence." "Boy, you're smart." Yang Kai nodded with satisfaction. Chapter 832. Another 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. Sun Yu's strength, who had been staying by Yang Kai's side, had improved greatly. In just 2 months, he had reached the peak of Yuan Qi stage from the 7th stage of Yuan Qi stage. Sun Yu was ecstatic. He was only 15 years old this year, and his aptitude was not very good, but it was not bad either. If he had cultivated at his previous speed, it would have taken him at least a year and a half to reach the peak of Yuan Qi stage. But now, he had done it in just 2 months. He knew that all this was due to the efforts of the senior surnamed Yang, so his attitude towards Yang Kai became more and more respectful. In the past 2 months, this senior had only provided him with some crystal stones to use for cultivation. In addition, he had given him a drop of unknown medicinal liquid every day. Sun Yu did not know what kind of mystery was hidden in this medicinal liquid, but after continuously taking it for 2 months, he could not help but feel like he had been reborn. His body had become lighter than before, his meridians had become tougher and wider, and his flesh and blood were more powerful than before. The most important thing was the Yuan Qi in his body. The purity and richness of the Yuan Qi was completely different from before. When Yuan Qi flowed in his meridians, Sun Yu could even hear some subtle movements. These were all signs of becoming stronger. The most direct manifestation was the consumption of crystal stones during cultivation. In the past, when he had a piece of crystal stone, it would take him at least 5 or 6 days to absorb all the energy in it. But now, 1 crystal stone a day was not enough, and the consumption rate was getting faster and faster. Fortunately, this senior Yang seemed to be extremely rich and did not have to worry about the consumption of crystal stones at all. Every time, he would give him a pile of crystal stones, and once he ran out, he would immediately have a new batch of crystal stones. Moreover, he also provided him with a large number of pills for cultivation, such as mysterious grade pills, spirit grade pills, and so on. Sun Yu was moved to tears. He knew that although this senior did not teach him any magical secret arts or martial skills, he had fundamentally improved his body, changing his physique and aptitude, and this change would be beneficial for a lifetime. Was this the legendary fortuitous encounter? Sun Yu's heart surged with excitement. In the past, when he was in the mansion, although he often heard his master and his fellow disciples talk about how some people with great luck would encounter some fortuitous encounters that others would never encounter in their lifetime, and thus soared to the sky and transformed into a dragon, Sun Yu only thought of it as a legend and never took it seriously. After all, how could such a good thing happen so casually? But now, everything that had happened to him could only be described as a fortuitous encounter. Sun Yu could no longer explain it. He rejoiced in his heart, rejoicing that he was the last one to enter Dragon Valley, rejoicing that he had been pulled into this golden world by that inexplicable force, and rejoicing that he had met such a good person like Senior Yang. Sun Yu could already see the beautiful future beckoning to him. He worked even harder to cultivate, not daring to slack off in the slightest. Such an opportunity was not something that everyone could encounter. Sun Yu was afraid that he would fail to live up to his own fortuitous encounter, but he was even more afraid that he would fail to live up to Senior Yang's expectations. He wished he could split himself into two and not eat or sleep. Yang Kai was very satisfied with Sun Yu's efforts. This little brat had perseverance and determination, and most importantly, he was obedient and was able to endure loneliness. Yang Kai began to appreciate him more and more. Originally, Yang Kai just wanted to give him some benefits as a form of hush money, but seeing him so diligently cultivate, Yang Kai spared no effort in training him. Every day, Yang Kai would give him a drop of myriad drug liquid, crystal stones, mysterious grade pills, and spirit grade pills he refined were all available for him to use at will without any restrictions. Everyone who worked hard should be given such an opportunity. Yang Kai thought about the hardships he had faced on the road to strength and couldn't help wanting to help him. What was rare was that Sun Yu actually understood the principle of relaxation. After breaking through to the peak of the Yuan-Qi boundary, he cultivated for a while, but after encountering a bottleneck, he was no longer anxious to succeed and instead began to relax, watching Yang Kai refine pills and asking him about the martial Dao. Breaking through to the immortal ascension boundary from the Yuan-Qi boundary was indeed a hurdle. Yang Kai himself had also faced this hurdle in the past, so naturally, he was very experienced and casually gave him a few pointers. Sun Yu's eyes immediately lit up, and after a day and night of contemplation, he once again began cultivating. Time passed day by day. One day, Yang Kai, who was in the middle of alchemy, suddenly noticed a trace of spiritual energy fluctuation from Sun Yu's spiritual energy and couldn't help showing a smile, stopping what he was doing and watching intently. Now was the most critical moment for Sun Yu in opening his knowledge sea, and no one could help him. Everything depended on his own efforts. The process of opening his knowledge sea lasted for a few days, and Yang Kai thoroughly witnessed Sun Yu's perseverance. On several occasions, Sun Yu had almost failed, but he had somehow managed to hold on. When the chaotic darkness was torn apart and an empty space suddenly appeared, Sun Yu's aura underwent some subtle changes. Immortal Ascension Boundary. He had finally broken through. Yang Kai breathed a sigh of relief. After getting along with this little brat for so many days, he had seen his efforts and naturally hoped he would succeed. Fortunately, Sun Yu had held on. The newly formed knowledge sea was completely empty, completely different from when Yang Kai first formed it. When Yang Kai was in the Yuan-Qi boundary, he had already cultivated his divine sense, so once his knowledge sea was opened, he had gathered a lot of spiritual energy and condensed it into an ocean. Sun Yu, on the other hand, had to start from the beginning and slowly cultivate his spiritual energy to form his own knowledge sea. Senior. Sun Yu's face was filled with excitement as he called out, somewhat incoherently, I've reached the immortal ascension boundary. Yang Kai smiled and nodded. Do you feel any difference from before? Even if I close my eyes, I seem to be able to see everything around me clearly. As your spiritual energy grows stronger, the things you can see and the distance between you and your spiritual energy will become more and more obvious. Your current spiritual energy is just like a candle in the wind, so work hard. Yes. Sun Yu responded respectfully before quickly closing his eyes and meditating. After a while, he opened his eyes again with an embarrassed expression and stammered, "But Senior." I don't know how to cultivate my spiritual energy. Master didn't teach me this. When he came to Dragon Valley, he was only in the Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage. According to his master Ling Jian's estimation, it would take at least 2 years for Sun Yu to reach the immortal ascension boundary, so he had planned to give him a systematic explanation and guidance at that time. Yang Kai couldn't help bursting into laughter as he generously imparted all of his insights and experiences to her. Sun Yu nodded repeatedly as he listened. Yen, the best way to cultivate your spiritual energy is to refine a soul-type artifact, which will be of great benefit to your growth. Yang Kai pondered for a moment before smiling. I happen to have a soul-type artifact here that is suitable for you. As he spoke, Yang Kai flipped his hand and a small exquisite sword suddenly appeared. This small sword was something Yang Kai had snatched from Pojing Lake when he participated in the Inheritance War in War City. It had been with him for some years now, but it was only a heaven-grade top-rank artifact. As Yang Kai's strength improved, this soul-type sword had become less and less useful. Sun Yu quickly waved his hand. Senior, you've already given me a lot of things. This artifact, I have no use for it. It's only a heaven-grade top-rank artifact, so it's a waste for me to keep it, but it's just right for your current realm. Hearing this, Sun Yu hesitated for a moment but didn't say anything more, stretching out his hands and respectfully accepting the small sword, quickly saying, "Many thanks for Senior's gift. Sun Yu will definitely not disgrace Senior's prestige." Yang Kai chuckled, casually erasing his soul aura from the small sword, lightly saying, "Refine it yourself. When you can take this artifact into your knowledge sea, you'll be fine." Sun Yu nodded seriously, not daring to neglect anything, and quickly began refining it. Yang Kai no longer paid him any attention and focused on refining his own pill. After such a long period of dedicated study and countless alchemy experiences, Yang Kai was now able to easily refine saint-grade pills. He had already become a saint-grade low-rank alchemist. He was only a small step away from meeting the requirements to rescue the ancient demon clan. There weren't many saint-grade alchemists on the entire continent. Du Wan of Grand Boulder City was one such alchemist and was treated with respect wherever he went. He even managed the Alchemist Guild in Grand Boulder City. With Yang Kai's current skills and means, as long as he wanted to, he could reach the same level as Du Wan. However, alchemy had always been Yang Kai's support in his pursuit of the martial Tao. His only wish was to pursue the peak of the martial Tao. During the process of alchemy, the use of his conflagrated knowledge sea allowed Yang Kai to discover a lot of questions and information that he had not thought of before, allowing him to gain a better understanding of how to manipulate his conflagrated knowledge sea. Although he was only a saint-grade low-rank alchemist now, Yang Kai estimated that if he used his myriad drug liquid and spirit array, there was a chance he could refine a saint-grade mid-rank pill. The space formed by the golden energy sea was still as solid as ever, and the golden dragon tattoo on Yang Kai's back continued to devour this energy. Its body grew larger and larger, and as it swallowed this energy, this golden dragon also became more dignified, exuding an aura that made one's heart palpitate. Yang Kai wasn't in a hurry and simply continued to wait. It had been a long time since he had so much time to do what he wanted to do, so this time's change was an opportunity. Like the golden dragon, Sun Yu was growing at an extremely fast rate every day. After his physique was improved by the myriad drug liquid, his cultivation was no longer as difficult as it used to be. The small soul-type sword Yang Kai had given him only took him a month to absorb into his knowledge sea, and after experimenting with its power a few times, he took a liking to it. His knowledge sea now had a decent amount of spiritual energy and spiritual energy. Every day, Sun Yu had a large number of crystal stones and pills to take, and when he encountered something he didn't understand during his cultivation, Sun Yu felt that he was luckier than anyone else. His attitude towards Yang Kai was as if he was his master and elder, extremely respectful. Chapter 833. On this day, after refining a saint pill, Yang Kai suddenly frowned. He found that inadvertently, the yang liquid stored in his dantian was about to run out. After replenishing a large amount of yang liquid last time, Yang Kai had thought that he wouldn't need to worry about running out of yang liquid for at least 10 years, but now he knew that he was wrong. Every time he tore space, he would need to consume several drops of precious yang liquid. When Yang Kai had been familiarizing himself with this method a few days ago, his consumption had been astonishing. It was time to replenish his stock. Yang Kai couldn't help rejoicing that he still had 60 to 70 fruits from the divine tree in his black book space, each of which contained an amazing amount of yang attribute energy. If he ate all of them, he would be able to replenish his dantian. The divine tree was now placed in his black book space. Although it wasn't easy for the fruit to grow and the cycle was long, this kind of precious treasure was meant for people to consume, so Yang Kai naturally wouldn't be stingy. Taking out a fruit, Yang Kai ate it. The sudden movement woke Sun Yu from his meditation, and when he looked up, his eyes couldn't help lighting up. He had now reached the immortal ascension boundary, so he could naturally perceive the extraordinariness of the divine tree's fruit, especially the yang attribute energy flowing through it. However, in front of Yang Kai, he didn't dare reveal too many thoughts. Just as he was about to close his eyes and continue meditating, Yang Kai smiled and reached out to cut him a piece of fruit. "It's not that I'm stingy, it's just that you can't eat too much of this." Sun Yu shyly accepted the small piece of fruit and tossed it into his mouth. A moment later, his yuan qi suddenly became violent and his face became extremely red. All of his pores opened up and began spraying out energy, as if he was on the verge of exploding. Yang Kai didn't pay him any mind and simply allowed him to suppress the violence in his body. Sun Yu didn't dare neglect and quickly circulated his secret art to absorb the energy that was pouring into his body. After a long while, the berserk aura gradually calmed down. Sun Yu's entire body was brimming with vitality, and his vitality was also much more vigorous. His face was very rosy, and he seemed to be extremely energetic. "Do you still want it?" Yang Kai asked. Sun Yu quickly shook his head. It was just a small piece of fruit, but it had almost caused him to suffer a great loss. Seeing Yang Kai eat one fruit after another without any hesitation, he couldn't help thinking to himself that this senior was truly worthy of being called a senior. His own ability was simply incomparable to this senior's. Although the fruit was obviously a good thing, Sun Yu knew his limits and didn't dare to eat it again. Yang Kai ate the 60 to 70 fruits in one go, and the dantian's yang liquid instantly soared to several hundred drops. Just as he was feeling satisfied though, Yang Kai's expression suddenly changed and he immersed his consciousness into the black book space. "What's wrong?" Yang Kai's soul avatar appeared in front of the giant divine tree and asked. "There's something strange over there," the divine tree transmitted. It had been a long time since Yang Kai had obtained the divine tree, and its sentience had grown rapidly. Now, it could communicate with Yang Kai without any hindrance and could clearly express its thoughts, no longer acting like it did before. "Where?" Yang Kai asked suspiciously. "Come with me." A golden light suddenly shot out from the divine tree and guided Yang Kai. Following it, Yang Kai soon arrived at a certain spot in the black book space, and looking around, his brow furrowed as a look of surprise appeared on his face. "It's here." The divine tree continued to transmit its thoughts as the golden light wandered nearby. Without needing its reminder, Yang Kai also noticed that something was wrong. There were a lot of broken stones scattered here, and some precious ores were also missing. In particular, the number of strange stones he had brought back from Starfield was significantly less. Yang Kai clearly remembered that after experiencing the storm in Starfield, he had collected a lot of strange stones and placed them here, as well as the ores he had swept up from Nine Heaven's Holy Land. But now, it seemed that something had absorbed the essence of some of these ores, leaving behind only some useless impurities. Yang Kai glanced over at the divine tree suspiciously. Last time, he had inadvertently discovered a similar problem, but at the time, he had thought it was the divine tree's doing, so he hadn't paid it any mind. Now, it seemed that this had nothing to do with the divine tree because it would not lie to him. "You've been here all this time, have you found anything?" Yang Kai asked as he carefully scanned the pile of ores with his divine sense, but found nothing. "I haven't found anything." The divine tree hesitated for a moment before replying, "I just feel like something is strange here. Help me keep an eye on this place. If you find anything, tell me immediately," Yang Kai said. Such a strange thing happening in the black book space confused Yang Kai. The energy in these strange stones should have suddenly disappeared, so it should have been swallowed up. If the divine tree didn't do it, then who did? If this problem wasn't solved, Yang Kai felt like a fishbone was stuck in his throat. After receiving a response from the divine tree, Yang Kai left the black book space and continued to improve his alchemy skills. Many days passed peacefully until one day, Yang Kai once again felt the call of the divine tree. Without hesitation, Yang Kai quickly sent his divine sense into the black book space and asked, "Did you find something?" Another golden ray shot out from the divine tree and arrived at the pile of ores. It wandered around two of the ores. "It's them. I can feel it. They are absorbing the essence of those ores. I'm sure of it." Following the direction it pointed, Yang Kai fixed his eyes on it and couldn't help letting out a light sigh. Although there were many ores here and they were all very disorderly, Yang Kai recognized these two stones and clearly remembered where he had obtained them. Because they were quite special, different from the other ores he had. Round black stones. The first one was found in the cave mansion where he obtained the soul-devouring insects. At that time, Yang Kai hadn't yet arrived at Soaring Heaven's sect and had followed Tsungyan and Feiyu into the cave mansion to investigate. Tsungyan and Feiyu had brought back a few things from the depths of the cave mansion, one of which was this round black stone, which Yang Kai had eventually obtained. The second round black stone was found in Floating Cloud City. While waiting for the 1,000-year demon flower to bloom, Yang Kai had been dragged by Du Wan and Mina to participate in the Alchemy Summit. When he finally won first place, he had found it in the universe bag of a saint-grade alchemist. Because the two round black stones were very similar, almost identical, Yang Kai had paid some attention to them at that time and had carefully examined them, but unfortunately he hadn't been able to find anything special. However, Yang Kai hadn't expected that the culprit behind the strange events in his black book space would actually be these two. What kind of strange stone in this world could absorb the essence of other ores? Yang Kai thought about it for a long time but still couldn't think of anything. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai carefully examined the two round black stones, and after a while, Yang Kai's expression became strange. He discovered that within the two pitch-black round stones, there were actually some exquisite patterns that resembled the meridians of a human body. Unfortunately, the patterns were not very coherent and were intermittent, as if the meridians of some martial artist had been destroyed by someone. This discovery surprised Yang Kai. Because when he first obtained these two round black stones, Yang Kai had carefully examined them and found that there was nothing inside them at that time. The disjointed patterns that had appeared inside them were obviously related to the absorption of the essence of the ores around them. At this moment, there was some unusual energy flowing through these patterns, similar to the yuan qi in a cultivator's body. These two strange stones are quite interesting. After thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai no longer paid any attention to them. After learning what had happened inside the black book space, he felt relieved and simply told the divine tree to continue observing these two strange stones while his consciousness left the black book space. He faintly felt that these two strange stones weren't simple and that if they were allowed to continue absorbing the essence of other ores, they might undergo some unexpected changes. By absorbing the essence of other ores, they would become stronger, and when the time came to refine a powerful artifact, Yang Kai was sure to refine it. Opening his eyes and looking around, Yang Kai saw that the golden dragon was still swallowing the surrounding energy and wouldn't stop anytime soon. Sun Yu was also immersed in her cultivation, refusing to relax. Yang Kai could only continue performing alchemy. In the holy tomb, he had refined a drop of demon god's blood and obtained the great demon god's divine technique, the soul fission technique. Yang Kai had also been cultivating this technique and was making good progress. His soul fission technique was constantly being nourished by the six-colored soul-warming lotus, constantly becoming stronger and tougher. At this moment, Yang Kai also clearly realized the benefits of the soul fission technique. When this divine technique was cultivated to the extreme, it was equivalent to a person having two souls, allowing them to cultivate spiritual energy at twice the speed of others. There had never been a secret art in this world that had such a miraculous effect. Although Yang Kai had not yet cultivated this technique to the extreme, he could clearly feel that because of the existence of his soul fission technique, whether it was the growth or recovery of his spiritual energy, both were significantly better than before. As such, Yang Kai spared no effort in cultivating his soul fission technique, hoping that one day it would be able to play its role. When the soul fission technique was cultivated to the extreme, as long as one could find a suitable body, they could allow their soul fission technique to enter that body and become their own avatar, allowing them to go to places where they couldn't. Yang Kai was also refining the saint-grade high-rank artifact that belonged to the old Holy Master. The silver leaf filled with mysterious power was extremely difficult to refine, but fortunately, Yang Kai had plenty of time, so he wasn't in a hurry. After confirming the changes in the Black Book space that day, Yang Kai would check the 2 pitch-black round stones every few days to see what kind of changes they had undergone. As time passed, the exquisite patterns inside them gradually became more coherent, but the price he had to pay was that the number of ores Yang Kai had collected had greatly decreased. Of the number of rare ores he had obtained from the Starfield and 9 Heavens Holy Land, only less than half remained. At this rate, it would only be a year or so before all the ores in the Black Book space would be exhausted. Inside the Golden Sea of Energy, whether it was Yang Kai or Sun Yu, both temporarily forgot about the passage of time and wholeheartedly busied themselves with their own affairs. Occasionally, the two of them would stop what they were doing and chat for a while before resuming their work, neither of them disturbing the other. The days passed in a meaningful manner. Whether it was Yang Kai or Sun Yu, both of them had obtained great growth and benefits during this time's changes. Chapter 834. Dragon Valley was long and winding, like a real dragon crouching on the ground. The valley was shrouded in fog all year round, obstructing one's vision. Even the most powerful masters who entered would not be able to see too far. Originally, there were many masters from Dragon Phoenix Palace hidden around Dragon Valley, but as time passed, these masters were now busy with their own tasks. Only Palace Master Chen Ju and the others who had been waiting at the entrance to the valley remained. At this moment, Chen Ju stared towards the valley floor with a worried expression and let out a long sigh. 2 years ago, when that disciple named Sun Yu opened the spirit array that had been sealed in Dragon Valley for many years, causing the golden dragon's head to appear, all of Dragon Phoenix Palace had boiled over. All of Dragon Phoenix Palace's elders had focused their attention on this place, feeling that there was hope for the sect's revival and that it would not be long before it could once again stand at the pinnacle of Tongxian realm and stand on equal footing with the top forces of the world. However, 2 years had passed and there was still no movement from that place. Although everyone could perceive a burst of shocking energy fluctuations, that disciple named Sun Yu still showed no signs of returning. Gradually, many people became disheartened. Although no one dared to say this in front of the palace master, in private, everyone was speculating that this time, that disciple named Sun Yu had most likely met with misfortune. He was only a Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage cultivator, so after not appearing for so long, it was likely he had already starved to death in Dragon Valley, so how could he have escaped? Staring at the golden light, Chen Ju let out another long sigh. Palace Master. Chen Ju's companion, Yu Tingyi, who was beside him, could not help comforting him. Since that disciple was able to open the spirit array, he must have had a great opportunity. I'm sure the heavens will help the worthy. Chen Ju did not respond, a gloomy expression filling his face. Yu Tingyi also sighed helplessly before turning to an old man nearby. Just like Chen Ju, who had been waiting here for 2 years, this old man had also been waiting anxiously. This old man was the elder who had taught Sun Yu, Ling Jian. Elder Ling Jian's strength was not high, and in Dragon Phoenix Palace, he only held the title of elder without any real power, so he was not very popular. 2 years ago, after Sun Yu had opened the barrier, Ling Jian's status had suddenly soared. Almost every elder who saw him had to treat him politely, allowing him to become like a fish in water in Dragon Phoenix Palace, his life flourishing. But now, no one treated him as seriously as they used to. Chen Ju and Ling Jian both stood there, gazing at the bottom of the valley, letting out long sighs. Both of them had a worried look on their faces. A figure quickly approached. It was another elder of Dragon Phoenix Palace, Xiao Ling. After arriving, he quietly glanced over at Chen Ju's face before glancing over at Yu Tingyi. The latter slowly shook her head, and her beautiful eyes were filled with helplessness and dejection. Xiao Ling immediately understood that the Dragon Valley was most likely still the same as before during this period of time. After a moment of contemplation, he cupped his fists and said, "Manor Lord, the elders have invited you to discuss some important matters. You guys go ahead and discuss. Just tell me the result." Chen Ju waved his hand dispiritedly. "But Manor Head, this matter must be decided by you personally. We dare not overstep our authority." Xiao Ling had a troubled expression on his face. Chen Ju frowned, a look of impatience appearing on his face. Seeing this, Yu Tingyi quickly said, "You should go. You haven't asked about the affairs of the palace these past 2 years. I want to wait here for the Dragon Emperor to return." Before Yu Tingyi could finish speaking, Chen Ju interrupted her. Yu Tingyi smiled bitterly. "Do you think this time will be the same as before? Ignorant fools, the Dragon Emperor will return, but now is not the time." Chen Ju coldly snorted, a look of determination appearing on his face. Yu Tingyi smiled and nodded. "If you say so, then so be it, but there's no need to be in such a hurry. The elders are all waiting for you. You can come back as soon as you see fit. As for here, Elder Ling Jian and I will keep watch. We won't let our guard down." Chen Ju glanced over at her for a moment before nodding lightly. "Then you need to be careful and keep your eyes open." Yu Tingyi nodded, feeling extremely helpless in her heart. Chen Ju couldn't help glancing over at the bottom of the valley before preparing to leave with Xiao Ling. Right at this moment, the Dragon Valley, which had been silent for 2 years, suddenly erupted with earth-shattering energy fluctuations again. The misty Dragon Valley seemed to have been swept up by a gust of fierce wind, and the sky suddenly became clear and bright. Gazing around, Chen Ju stared straight at the bottom of the valley. Chen Ju's footsteps suddenly came to a halt, his body trembling with excitement as he stared towards the valley. Ling Jian, on the other hand, was also observing closely, his pair of turbid eyes flashing with anticipation as his withered hands trembled. "There's movement." Chen Ju couldn't help shouting. Xiao Ling, who had come to invite Chen Ju, also couldn't help stopping in place and staring towards the valley floor suspiciously, his mood subtly becoming somewhat excited. Although the elders had always been dissatisfied with the palace master not asking about the affairs of the palace these past 2 years, instead spending all his time at the entrance to Dragon Valley, and even felt that it was impossible for that disciple named Sun Yu to survive, when such an abnormal phenomenon appeared in front of them, Xiao Ling couldn't help feeling a sense of expectation. After all, he was also a member of Dragon Phoenix Palace. At the bottom of the valley, inside the Golden Sea of Energy, the Golden Dragon finally finished swallowing all the energy here, its body exuding a dazzling light, as if it was a real dragon that was coiled up in place, exuding a majestic aura. Sun Yu, who was in the middle of meditating, was suddenly alarmed and raised his eyes, only to see a pair of wash-basin-sized dragon eyes, causing him to freeze in place as a pained expression appeared on his face. At that moment, he felt as if his soul was being pulled out of his knowledge sea and was about to be crushed. In front of him, a figure flickered and Yang Kai appeared in front of him. Sun Yu quickly closed his eyes, calmed his mind, and began circulating his secret art. A resounding dragon roar rang out, and the golden dragon soared into the sky. The clear sky seemed to be torn open and in an instant, all the light was swallowed up, blinding everyone within 100 kilometers. The golden dragon seemed to have been trapped for thousands of years, and now that it was free, it soared through the sky to its heart's content. A moment later, it suddenly swooped down and slammed into Yang Kai with a devastating force. Yang Kai let out a muffled groan as he instantly felt that he had regained what he had lost. What's more, it carried with it an unimaginably terrifying amount of energy. His clothes exploded with a loud boom, turning into fine powder. Yang Kai reacted quickly and summoned out several grand heavenly shields to wrap Sun Yu up. At the same time, he also summoned the Silver Leaf Saint grade high-rank artifact. The silver leaf pulsed with a series of unusual fluctuations and in the blink of an eye, it grew in size and enveloped Sun Yu. Facing such a violent force, if Yang Kai had not done so, Sun Yu would not have been able to resist at all and would have been reduced to ashes in an instant. After such a long time, Yang Kai finally managed to refine this artifact that belonged to the old Holy Master of 9 Heavens Holy Land. This silver leaf had a myriad of transformations and infinite uses, capable of both offensive and defensive functions, not the slightest disgrace to its saint-grade high-rank. Asterisk catcher. Asterisk the sound of bones dislocating resounded throughout Yang Kai's body as his physique began to wriggle and the yuan qi in his body began to circulate at an unimaginable speed, placing a huge burden on his meridians. In an instant, Yang Kai's skin began to crack in countless places, blood gushing out and covering his body in a golden sheen. Under the powerful restorative power of the demon god Golden Blood, the damaged areas were quickly repaired. However, this was still not enough to stop the impact of the world energy in his body, constantly breaking and repairing his body, repeating the process over and over again. Yang Kai remained calm, and not only did he not show any signs of pain, he even seemed to be in high spirits. When the golden dragon returned to his body and transformed back into the golden dragon tattoo, Yang Kai suddenly felt that the world in front of him had undergone some subtle changes. The world energy that flowed between him and the heavens had also become somewhat different from before. Faintly, Yang Kai seemed to be able to see traces of the heavenly way and martial Tao. The key points he had not been able to grasp before were now easily grasped. Standing in place, Yang Kai held his breath, closed his eyes, and began to comprehend quietly. Above his head, the wind and clouds were converging. All the heaven and earth energy within a radius of 100 miles was being pulled by an invisible force, madly converging in this direction. This violent world energy manifestation naturally alarmed the elders of Dragon Phoenix Palace, causing almost all of them to rush out of their nests and gather in front of Dragon Valley, staring blankly ahead. Chen Ju and Ling Jian, who had been guarding this place all this time, couldn't help but stare at this scene with amazement, the latter even crying tears of excitement. Although they did not feel Sun Yu's aura from this place, everyone knew that this scene was definitely related to him. Perhaps he had succeeded in inheriting the Dragon Emperor's inheritance and was now undergoing the final test. Such violent energy fluctuations, this is a sign of a breakthrough, Xiao Ling muttered to himself. Yu Tingyi also nodded lightly. It's not inferior to the breakthrough of a Saint Realm master. When Chen Ju broke through to the Saint Realm many years ago, a world energy manifestation had also appeared, but compared to this scene, it was still somewhat inferior. Was the Dragon Emperor's inheritance really so amazing? When Sun Yu entered this place 2 years ago, he was only at the Yuan Qi 7th stage, so what was his current level? It was impossible for him to reach the Saint Realm in just 2 years, right? Could he withstand such a violent energy fluctuation? Everyone couldn't help worrying. Chen Ju suddenly shouted, "Pass down my order, seal off the surrounding 30-kilometer radius of my mansion, no one is allowed to enter. If anyone dares to force their way in, no matter who they are, kill them without mercy." Such a big disturbance was bound to attract nearby masters, and if it was someone who coveted the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, it would likely cause some unnecessary disturbances. In particular, the nearby frozen nether cave heaven had become restless as early as 2 years ago and had been using all kinds of methods to inquire about the situation in Dragon Valley, but since Sun Yu's fate had been unknown for the past 2 years, they had not acted too recklessly. However, with the appearance of this world energy manifestation today, they would definitely take action. Seeing Chen Ju's murderous look, Xiao Ling also realized the seriousness of the matter. He hurriedly accepted the order and began to make arrangements. The Dragon Emperor's might has finally reappeared today, these past 2 years. I haven't waited in vain. Chen Ju's eyes flashed with tears, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Chapter 835. At the bottom of Dragon Valley, Yang Kai stood quietly in place, as if he was immersed in a sea of world energy. This feeling was quite subtle and was something Yang Kai had never experienced before. The strength in his body continued to rise and soon reached a peak level, but there was still no sign of it stopping, continuing to climb crazily until it broke through its original limit. Yang Kai clearly knew that he was on the verge of breaking through. It had been several years since his last breakthrough, and while waiting for the golden dragon to devour him, Yang Kai had not neglected his own cultivation and had gained many insights during the process of alchemy. It could be said that this time's breakthrough was completely natural, without the slightest hindrance. The power of the world energy poured into Yang Kai's body, tempering it and refining his yuan qi. His flesh and blood wriggled and flowed, filling every part of his body with unimaginable power. Yang Kai was ecstatic. Opening his mind and body to the fullest, he welcomed the baptism of the world energy in a completely defenseless manner. When most cultivators were breaking through, they would use their true qi or artifacts to protect themselves so as to avoid being injured by the world energy during their breakthrough. Although this approach was extremely safe, it would also result in fewer benefits. However, Yang Kai did not need to do this at all. This was one of the benefits of having a tyrannical physique. The stronger one was, the more benefits one would obtain, creating a virtuous cycle. This was why every cultivator paid so much attention to their foundation. The more solid their foundation was, the more benefits they would receive in the future. Yang Kai's foundation was impregnable. Glancing casually at Sun Yu, who was wrapped in the grand heavenly shield and the silver leaf, Yang Kai found that he would not be affected, allowing him to relax. A series of sensational world energy descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake, as if the end of the world had arrived. The people from Dragon Phoenix Palace guarding the entrance to the valley all paled, their eyelids twitching. Seeing such a destructive force, no one could guarantee that Sun Yu would be able to return safely. Chen Ju and Ling Jian were both as anxious as ants on a hot pan. They wanted to go to the bottom of the valley to see what was going on, but they were also afraid that they would disturb Sun Yu if they rashly went there. It was at this time that Xiao Ling, who had rushed out to arrange the deployment, came back with a report that the nearby frozen nether cave heaven had indeed been alerted and all the masters there had been dispatched. Under the leadership of 2 First Order saints, they were rushing towards the Dragon Valley. Chen Ju's face turned cold, and a sharp cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. It was as cold as the edge of a blade. Since the decline of Dragon Phoenix Palace, this frozen nether cave heaven had come into being. Normally, the two forces would have no shortage of friction, but since each side had a Saint Realm Master presiding over them, there were always minor disputes, but no large-scale battle had ever broken out. Everyone knew that once a large-scale battle broke out, no one would be able to gain any benefits. Although Dragon Phoenix Palace only had one Saint Realm Master, Chen Ju, if they really fought, frozen nether cave heaven wouldn't be able to afford too many losses. But this time, they had come in full force, and Chen Ju was well aware of why they had come. Elder Ling, I'll leave this place to you. If Sun Yu can return safely, take him away from Dragon Phoenix Palace and tell him that the revitalization of my palace depends on him. Palace Master. Ling Jian's complexion changed, faintly realizing what Chen Ju wanted to do. Xiao Ling, Ting Yi, come with me to meet the enemy. I want to see what kind of ability they have to invade my Dragon Phoenix Palace. Chen Ju shouted, his figure flickering as he flew off into the distance. Xiao Ling and Yu Tingyi also hurriedly followed. At the mouth of the valley, only Ling Jian remained. Staring at the bottom of the valley, Ling Jian became as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, stomping his foot and muttering, "Smelly brat, you still haven't come out? You're making this old master anxious." From the depths of the valley, a burst of world energy descended, but Yang Kai didn't refuse it all and simply accepted it all with a look of excitement on his face. This situation lasted for about an hour before the world energy that had gathered around Dragon Valley gradually thinned out and the terrifying world energy that had enveloped it gradually dissipated. An invisible wave of world energy, centered on Yang Kai, quickly spread out in all directions. At this moment, Yang Kai's body felt light and a sense of incomparable comfort spread from every inch of his skin and physique. Gently clenching his fists, Yang Kai's strength surged. Spreading out his divine sense, the range he could reach was much further than before, allowing him to observe more subtly. Third Order Transcendent Realm. He was only a minor realm away from the Saint Realm. A few dozen kilometers away, some people were fighting, and it was a battle to the death. Bursts of powerful Saint Realm auras were transmitted over, causing Yang Kai to frown slightly, wondering what was happening. Not paying much attention to what was happening outside, Yang Kai lowered his head and examined himself. The golden dragon tattoo that should have been on his back seemed to have a life of its own at this moment, constantly moving across Yang Kai's skin from his back to his chest, giving him an extremely strange appearance. At this moment, this golden dragon tattoo also contained an unimaginable amount of energy, a power that even Yang Kai couldn't help feeling somewhat apprehensive. This golden dragon tattoo was filled with endless majesty and a unique aura. Demonic Qi. Having come into contact with so many masters from the monster race and even having spoken with a monster race great senior, Yang Kai was naturally very familiar with this demonic Qi. At this moment, the energy contained within this golden dragon tattoo was clearly demonic Qi. With a flash of understanding, Kai Yang instantly understood everything. The inheritance here was the real Dragon Emperor inheritance. What he and Su Yang obtained in the Heaven's Cave inheritance was nothing more than a primer. Only by coming here to obtain the hidden mysteries could they truly become the Dragon Emperor and Phoenix Empress. Yang Kai didn't know why he understood all of this, but it should have something to do with obtaining the real Dragon Emperor inheritance. After examining this for a long time, Yang Kai was extremely satisfied. Taking out a set of clothes from the black book space and putting them on, Yang Kai released the protective shield around Sun Yu. The grand heavenly shield shattered and the silver leaf-like artifact was also taken back by Yang Kai. Sun Yu seemed to still be in a state of shock, but after seeing Yang Kai, he quickly cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks, Senior, for saving me." He clearly knew that if it weren't for Yang Kai protecting him just now, he would have long since died. Facing such terrifying power, even if he cultivated for a few dozen more years, he wouldn't necessarily be able to resist. A minor matter. Yang Kai smiled lightly, turned his head towards the entrance of the valley, and said, "There seems to be a first-order transcendent cultivator waiting for you over there." First-order transcendent. Sun Yu was surprised but immediately became excited. That must be Master. Damn, we've been trapped here for so many days, Master must be anxious. Senior, do you know how long we've been here? About 2 years, Yang Kai replied casually. That long? Sun Yu was secretly dumbfounded. 2 years had passed in a flash, he hadn't even noticed the passage of time. Following Yang Kai had given him huge benefits, the pleasant surprise and excitement had diluted his concept of time. Don't be in such a hurry to leave, Yang Kai chuckled, looking at him and saying, "Do you remember the agreement between us?" Sun Yu nodded firmly. "I remember, Senior has treated me like a respected master. I will not reveal your existence." Very good. But, if Palace Master and Master ask about the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, how am I supposed to answer? Yang Kai frowned, feeling that there was no good excuse. Although he had been cultivating Sun Yu all this time, allowing his aptitude to undergo earth-shaking changes, and given time, Sun Yu was certain to have great achievements, this Dragon Emperor's inheritance could not be faked. Shaking his head, Yang Kai said, "Let's not talk about that for now. Your Dragon Phoenix Palace's master seems to be in a fierce battle with someone and seems to be at a disadvantage." In a fierce battle? Sun Yu frowned, releasing his divine sense but was unable to sense anything. Sun Yu's cultivation wasn't high enough so he couldn't perceive anything happening a few dozen kilometers away, but after a moment of contemplation, he realized, it must be those from frozen Nether Cave Heaven. Damn it, that group of bastards must have noticed the commotion here and decided to invade my Dragon Phoenix Palace. Is there some kind of enmity between your two forces? Yang Kai was surprised. Sun Yu shook his head, it's just them looking for trouble. They specialize in ice attribute secret arts and martial skills, but my Dragon Phoenix Palace has something they covet. Yang Kai frowned, suddenly thinking of the key point, the Phoenix Nest's inheritance. Sun Yu nodded. Now that the Dragon Emperor's inheritance has appeared, the Dragon Emperor will definitely need to find a woman he admires to inherit the Phoenix Nest's inheritance. That is frozen Nether Cave Heaven's goal. Once they succeed, they may try to annex our Dragon Phoenix Palace. Yang Kai chuckled meaningfully. Senior, what are you laughing about? Sun Yu was surprised. You're in big trouble. Yang Kai gloated. Sun Yu thought about it for a moment before his expression became bitter as he suddenly understood. Everyone in Dragon Phoenix Palace thought he had opened the barrier and obtained the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, so even if this news was tightly sealed, it would not be able to escape frozen Nether Cave Heaven's notice. In other words, frozen Nether Cave Heaven's goal this time was none other than Sun Yu. They wanted to capture him and force him to choose a woman from frozen Nether Cave Heaven as the successor to the Phoenix Empress and allow her to obtain the Phoenix Nest's inheritance. Senior. Sun Yu's face was filled with panic as he stared towards Yang Kai, hoping he would be able to rescue him. Don't worry, since this is something I caused, I'll help you deal with it. I'll also take this opportunity to let your Dragon Phoenix Palace confirm that you have obtained the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. Sun Yu was overjoyed. Many thanks, Senior. It's fine. Yang Kai smiled lightly. Go, I'll protect you and make sure you don't suffer any harm. Be brave. Yes. After receiving Yang Kai's promise, Sun Yu was extremely excited and hurried off towards the entrance of the valley. It seemed that in his opinion, this senior Yang would be able to easily repel frozen Nether Cave Heaven. After Sun Yu left, Yang Kai turned his gaze towards the direction of the battle, a displeased expression filling his face. The Phoenix Nest's inheritance belonged to Su Yang, but frozen Nether Cave Heaven had actually set their sights on her. It was no different from stirring up trouble. If it weren't for this reason, Yang Kai would not have been willing to intervene in the disputes of other great forces. However, Dragon Phoenix Palace had some kind of relationship with him, so this time he had decided to help free of charge and return the favor of obtaining the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. Chapter 836. Ling Jian stood at the entrance of Dragon Valley and waited anxiously, muttering something under his breath, but never seeing Sun Yu emerge from Dragon Valley. Gradually, Ling Jian even began to believe that his disciple had perished in that terrifying heaven and earth might. Just as he was at a loss for what to do, a tall and slender figure rushed over from the direction of the Dragon Valley. Ling Jian's body shuddered as he cast his gaze toward that direction with wide eyes. This figure was somewhat similar to Sun Yu, but it was taller and stronger than he remembered. Ling Jian's vision was blurred by his old age, so he couldn't determine what this figure was for a while and began paying close attention. A moment later, the appearance of this figure finally entered Ling Jian's eyes. After confirming that this person was Sun Yu, Ling Jian burst into tears, laughing and crying as he cursed, "Smelly brat, you've finally come out. You had me worried sick. Master." Sun Yu wore an extremely excited expression as he rushed over to Ling Jian and bowed deeply, but before he could say anything, Ling Jian grabbed his arm and hurriedly said, "Come with me." Seeing him like this, Sun Yu asked curiously, "Where are we going?" When frozen Nether Cave Heaven invaded, Palace Master and the others were busy defending, but the other side had 2 Saint Realm Masters. We were unable to stop them. Before Palace Master left, he ordered me to take you to a safe place after you came out. The future revitalization of the sect will depend on you. Where's the safe place? Sun Yu frowned. Twin Spirit Pavilion. My Dragon Phoenix Palace has always had a good relationship with the Twin Spirit Pavilion. We'll go to their place and hide for a while. Ling Jian had already thought about where to go. His apprentice Sun Yu had now inherited the Dragon Emperor's inheritance and was certain to grow into an overlord in the future. On top of that, he urgently needed to find a suitable woman to inherit the Phoenix Nest's inheritance. Presumably, the Twin Spirit Pavilion, who knew about all this, would protect them properly. As long as he accepted this kindness, it wouldn't be unreasonable for Sun Yu to find a Phoenix Empress from the Twin Spirit Pavilion. In any case, the Phoenix Empress inheritance couldn't fall into the hands of an enemy like frozen Nether Cave Heaven. I'm not going. Sun Yu suddenly broke free from Ling Jian's grasp and stood in place. Ling Jian was stunned, turning around to look at Yang Kai, anxiously stamping his feet. You stinking brat, even at this time you still won't listen to Master's words. Do you want to anger this old master to death? Sun Yu snorted coldly and said, "The sect is in danger. How can I just walk away? Since the frozen Nether Cave Heaven dared to invade, I will make them pay the price." Ling Jian couldn't help feeling a little absent-minded as he looked at his apprentice in a daze. For a moment, he couldn't understand the situation. Although his disciple had inherited the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, where did he get the confidence to say that frozen Nether Cave Heaven would pay the price? Did he have the ability to do so? Releasing his divine sense, Ling Jian scanned Sun Yu's body and after discovering his current realm, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he cried out involuntarily, You want us to pay the price? Ha 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 ha, brat, you're so arrogant. A loud laugh suddenly came from the side. Along with this sarcastic voice, a number of figures quickly appeared from all directions, each of them wearing white robes that served as a stark contrast to their appearance. Sun Yu's complexion changed and he couldn't help hiding behind Ling Jian. Ling Jian's expression also became dignified, protecting his apprentice while coldly glancing around and shouting, "Frozen Nether Cave Heaven's people." The newcomers were from Frozen Nether Cave Heaven, 5 in total, all of them transcendent realm cultivator. With such a large number and level of cultivator, there was no suspense in the face of Ling Jian, who was only a first-order transcendent. As such, they had appeared without fear and stared at this master and apprentice pair with mischievous looks on their faces. The middle-aged man leading this group looked at Sun Yu with a smirk and shouted, "Little brat, are you the one who just said you want my frozen nether cave heaven to pay the price?" Sun Yu's face went pale and he didn't dare to speak. Although his aptitude had greatly improved under the cultivation of Yang Kai and his cultivation had soared, in the end, he was still just a 16 or 17-year-old boy who had never experienced any great storms. Now that he was facing 5 transcendents at once, his courage had completely disappeared. If it weren't for his master standing in front of him protecting him, he likely would have already lost all will to fight. Hiding behind Ling Jian, he looked around as if he was looking for something. A moment later, his face lit up and his panicked expression gradually calmed down. After the middle-aged man said this, he no longer paid any attention to Ling Jian and his apprentice, instead turning his eyes towards the bottom of Dragon Valley along with the other 4, stroking his chin and asking, "The heavenly manifestation just now should have been caused by something happening here, right? Ian, this place is said to be Dragon Phoenix Palace's Dragon Valley and to contain the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. We never believed it, but now it seems it may be true. For the past 2 years, Chen Ju has been guarding this place. If that's the case, then one of Dragon Phoenix Palace's disciples must have obtained the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, right? Ian, we've already inquired about it. The one who entered is called Sun Yu and only has a cultivation at the Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage. That little brat sure has good luck. Let's go in and take a look then capture him." These 5 transcendent realm cultivators completely ignored Ling Jian and his disciple and began talking amongst themselves one after another. Ling Jian was still on edge, but after listening to their conversation, he suddenly realized that this was an opportunity. These 5 didn't seem to know that the young man in front of them was the Sun Yu they were looking for. After all, they had never seen Sun Yu before, and the change in Sun Yu's cultivation was too great, leading these people to make some wrong inferences and believe that Sun Yu was still inside. "Friends," Ling Jian said vigilantly, "if you want to go in, this old master won't stop you, but can you let us leave first?" "You want to leave?" The middle-aged man in the lead glanced over at him and chuckled, nodding, "Good, let this little brat cut off his own tongue first. Daring to say he wants our frozen nether cave heaven to pay the price, a tongue like that will only attract trouble. Keeping it is useless, sooner or later it will only bring him a fatal disaster." Ling Jian's complexion changed as he smiled apologetically, "My young apprentice is young and ignorant, this old master will apologize to you on his behalf. I hope that master can be magnanimous and let him go this time." Ha 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 ha. The 5 people from Frozen Nether Cave Heaven burst into laughter, feeling quite amused. The middle-aged man sneered and said, "We can let him go. Young people will inevitably make mistakes, we don't want to bully the weak. Ian, since he is your apprentice, you can take his place and accept his punishment. Kneel down and kowtow a few times, then loudly say that your Dragon Phoenix Palace is worse than dogs and pigs. I'll consider letting him go, how about it?" Saying so, he turned to Ling Jian and glared at him. Ling Jian's expression became cold. Although he was extremely old, in the end, he was still a cultivator who had reached the transcendent realm, so he still had his blood and backbone. This middle-aged man acting so arrogantly, how could Ling Jian not be annoyed? But when he remembered Palace Master Chen Ju's previous instructions, Ling Jian suppressed the anger in his heart and shot a humiliating look towards the middle-aged man, his expression indifferent as he slowly knelt down. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with a mocking light as he sneered. "Master!" Ling Jian suddenly reached out and supported Ling Jian, his young face filled with a gloomy light like the calm before a storm. All of his previous timidity and panic seemed to have been thrown away, replaced by a pair of clear eyes filled with hatred and murderous intent. Smelly brat. Ling Jian glared at him. Sun Yu slowly shook his head before taking a step forward and walking over to Ling Jian, turning to the 5 people in front of him and asking, "You came here to find Sun Yu this time, right?" "Little brat, you talk too much nonsense," the middle-aged man said with displeasure. "I am Sun Yu, you don't need to look for me inside." The middle-aged man was startled as he stared at Sun Yu in amazement, seemingly unable to react for a moment. The other 4 also wore similar expressions. "There's no need to doubt me," Sun Yu sneered. "When I entered, I was indeed only at the Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage, but that was 2 years ago. Crossing a great realm in 2 years?" the middle-aged man exclaimed. Sun Yu was now an immortal ascension boundary 7th stage cultivator, so compared to the Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage, he had indeed crossed a great realm. Because the gap in strength was so great, when they arrived here, none of them had expected this young man to be Sun Yu. Another person's eyes lit up. Could this be the power of the so-called Dragon Emperor's inheritance? "If you think so, it's possible." Sun Yu lightly snorted, a leisurely look upon his face. Facing 5 transcendent realm masters, he didn't show the slightest bit of fear, completely different from before. When the 5 people from frozen Nether Cave Heaven heard him say this, their expressions suddenly became excited. In just 2 years, a cultivator had grown from the Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage to the Immortal Ascension boundary 7th stage. This was nothing short of a miracle. They instantly realized how powerful the Dragon Emperor's inheritance was. Even their gazes towards Sun Yu had become scorching hot. "You smelly brat." Ling Jian coughed up blood in anger. These 5 people had eyes but failed to recognize his identity. Originally, as long as they suffered some grievances, they would have a chance to leave this place. As long as he could protect Sun Yu, Ling Jian didn't care how much he was insulted, but now this fool had actually admitted it. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? Ling Jian really didn't know if there was a hole in this kid's head. He had never thought he would be so stupid before. Although his aptitude wasn't very good, his temperament wasn't smooth enough, and he wasn't very clever, at least he shouldn't be so stupid, right? Why did his temperament suddenly change after going to Dragon Valley? Ling Jian couldn't wait to slap this disciple of his unconscious, lest he continue to blabber on. "Master, it's fine." Sun Yu smiled slightly, nodding gently to his master, his expression confident. Looking at his son's smile, Ling Jian didn't know why, but he seemed to be affected by it and his mood inexplicably calmed down. The pressure he felt from the 5 transcendents also became much lighter. Chuckling, Ling Jian nodded. "Good, since it's like this, Master will accompany you. Whether we live or die will depend on the good fortune of this master and disciple. We won't die. If anyone dies, it will be them." Sun Yu's tone suddenly became cold as he glared towards the 5 people, like a sharp knife stabbing straight into their eyes, bringing with it an aggressive aura. The 5 transcendents couldn't help taking a step back, their expressions solemn as they frowned. Chapter 837. Sun Yu's confident expression made the 5 transcendents from frozen Nether Cave Heaven somewhat confused. Although this little brat had crossed an entire great realm in just 2 years, in the end, he was only an Immortal Ascension boundary 7th stage cultivator. Against the 5 of them, how could he possibly resist? So why wasn't this little brat afraid? Instead, he was looking at them like a cat playing with a mouse. After hesitating for a moment, the middle-aged leader shouted, "Smelly brat, I'd like to see how you'll kill us." Saying so, he waved his hand and shouted, "Capture this little brat and kill this old dog." The 4 people behind him immediately moved, all of them moving like bolts of lightning, instantly arriving in front of Ling Jian and his disciple. One of them grabbed Sun Yu, wanting to capture him alive, while the other 3 attacked Ling Jian mercilessly, intent on taking his life. Ling Jian didn't even have time to react before the attacks of the 3 arrived, causing him to break out in a cold sweat, silently cursing his fate. But in the next moment, a strange scene occurred. Of the 4 people who rushed over, whether it was the transcendent who grabbed Sun Yu or the 3 who attacked Ling Jian, all of them seemed to be under some kind of spell, their movements suddenly becoming sluggish as their faces filled with pain, each of them covering their heads with their hands and rolling on the ground, howling miserably. The spiritual energy in their knowledge seas suddenly burst out in a chaotic manner, as if some kind of attack was destroying their souls. The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed as he shouted. But there was no response. After 5 breaths of time, the 4 people stopped moving, all of them lying stiffly on the ground, their vitality drained away, their eyes wide open. Ling Jian stared at all this in amazement, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Sun Yu was also gasping for breath, unable to calm his mind for a moment. Just now, the frozen nether cave heaven cultivator had grabbed his arm, but now such a sudden change had occurred. Glancing around happily, Sun Yu knew that all of this must have been caused by Senior Yang's intervention. Worthy of a powerful master, for transcendence who had rendered this master and disciple powerless had actually died so inexplicably, and from the look on the middle-aged man's face, it was obvious he hadn't noticed anything amiss. Sun Yu's heart settled as he stared towards the middle-aged man with a grin. Meeting his gaze, the middle-aged man couldn't help taking a few steps back, a chill running down his spine. "Little brat, did you do this?" The middle-aged man still couldn't believe it and asked in a trembling voice. "Facing a dying man, there's no need for me to answer, right?" Sun Yu calmly pointed his finger towards the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was terrified and let out a strange cry, summoning his own artifact to protect himself as he fled. He didn't know what he had done, but his sect master had, he, and disciple, Sun Yu and disciple, if he remained, he would be next. Was the inheritance of the dragon monarch so strange and unpredictable? In any case, Yang Kai had to inform the 2 Saint Realm seniors of this news so they could be on guard. "Die!" Sun Yu shouted. As his voice rang out, the middle-aged man, who had already fled a few dozen meters, suddenly screamed and, like his 4 companions, clutched his head with both hands and fell to the ground. After stabilizing himself, his soul returned to the netherworld, his eyes dim. 5 transcendents dying like this caused Sun Yu's face to flush with excitement, constantly glancing around, an expression of wanting to be praised. "Good job, keep up the act." Hearing Senior Yang's voice in his mind, Sun Yu was suddenly filled with energy, feeling like his entire body was filled with strength, wishing he could fly to the frozen nether cave mansion's sect right now and start a massacre. "Smelly brat." Ling Jian's lips trembled, his face faintly pale as he stammered, You killed 5 transcendents." Even now, Ling Jian still couldn't believe what he was seeing. Everything in front of him was too surreal and ridiculous. He still remembered that 2 years ago, this disciple of his couldn't even defeat a cultivator of the same level. 2 years later, this disciple of his had actually defeated 5 powerful enemies that even he couldn't compare to. Ling Jian couldn't help feeling like he was in some kind of dream. "No, master, it's all thanks to the Dragon Emperor's inheritance." Sun Yu couldn't bear to deceive his master and replied tactfully. Ling Jian was stunned for a moment before crying bitterly, "The heavens have eyes, the heavens have eyes. Master, we won't go to Twin Spirit Pavilion, I want to find the Palace Master and help the sect resolve this crisis. So that's how it is." Seeing Sun Yu's strange methods, Ling Jian was no longer as insistent as before, only saying somewhat worriedly, "There are 2 Saint Realm Masters over there, although Palace Master can handle one of them, you." "Don't worry master, I know what I'm doing." Sun Yu's expression was firm, intentionally or unintentionally glancing around. Although he didn't see Yang Kai, he knew that Senior Yang was hiding right beside him. Sun Yu was unscrupulous. "Good. I'll go with you, I'll explain to the Palace Master. When the sect is in danger, as disciples of the sect, we really shouldn't run away." Ling Jian was also inspired by his disciple's words, his fighting spirit soaring. The master and disciple pair flew together towards the scene of the battle. 30 kilometers away, mid-air, a group of cultivators were engaged in a fierce battle, constantly suffering injuries and deaths, their corpses falling from the sky. The brilliance of martial skills and artifacts blooming in the sky was a clear indication of the tragedy of the battle. Dragon Phoenix Palace and Frozen Nether Cave Heaven had a long history of grievances, so this time Frozen Nether Cave Heaven had come prepared. On top of that, they had one more Saint Realm Master, so naturally they had taken the initiative. Less than half an hour after the battle began, Dragon Phoenix Palace had already suffered heavy losses. Palace Master Chen Ju and Yu Tingyi had joined forces to fight the two opposing Saint Realm Masters, causing them to suffer many wounds and consume a great deal of their strength. If not for fear of Chen Ju's desperate resistance, the two Saint Realm Masters from frozen Nether Cave Heaven would likely have already killed him. Bai Jingchu, Yang Ji, if you don't destroy my Dragon Phoenix Palace today, one day I'll kill you all, Chen Ju shouted, his voice rumbling like thunder, filled with unwillingness, anger, and helplessness. Yu Tingyi stood side by side with him, panting heavily, her full breasts heaving up and down as blood dripped from her lower abdomen. She was only a third-order transcendent, so in such a high-intensity battle, she really couldn't bear it. However, because she and Chen Ju cultivated a dual cultivation art, when the two of them fought together, they were able to increase Chen Ju's strength. She had no choice but to join the battle. Without her, Chen Ju would be alone. Bai Jingchu and Yang Ji of frozen Nether Cave Heaven glanced at each other before leaping out of the battle, the former laughing loudly. Chen Ju, since we've come here today, we'll do as you wish and destroy your Dragon Phoenix Palace, you don't need to worry about that. As for killing us all, I'm afraid you won't have the chance. Chen Ju wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sneered, the Dragon Emperor's inheritance has appeared, the Dragon Emperor and Phoenix Empress will return and avenge my Dragon Phoenix Palace. The Dragon Emperor's inheritance? Yang Ji chuckled, saying casually, is it in Dragon Valley? I don't know if my subordinates have arrived yet, but looking at the time, they should have. I'm afraid your Dragon Emperor's successor is currently in the hands of my subordinates. Rest assured, I'll help you cultivate your Dragon Emperor's successor. Good, we won't treat him unfairly. It's said that the Dragon Emperor's successor still needs to find a Phoenix Emperor's successor. My frozen Nether Cave Heaven has countless beauties, once that little brat gets there, I'm afraid he'll forget to return. The two of them spoke in a casual tone, causing Chen Ju's complexion to change dramatically as his heart sank to the bottom of his stomach. Over in Dragon Valley, only Ling Jian was left standing guard. With his strength, it was impossible for him to resist a powerful master. If this really happened, Dragon Phoenix Palace would no longer have a chance to rise again. Despicable. Chen Ju ground his teeth and cursed. Yang Ji's eyes flashed as he sent out a burst of pure spiritual energy from his knowledge sea towards Yu Tingyi, who was standing beside Chen Ju. Having been distracted by the words of these two, Chen Ju was caught off guard, and by the time he reacted, Yu Tingyi had already been struck. A pitiful cry rang out as Yu Tingyi seemed to have been struck by a huge force, her delicate body flying back several dozen meters as she fell to the ground, her face pale. Chen Ju's eyes went bloodshot and he was about to rush forward to rescue her when Bai Jingchu intercepted him and sneered, without your woman, I want to see what you'll use to fight me. Dragon Phoenix Palace's dual cultivation secret art was quite extraordinary. When a man and woman pair cultivated dual cultivation together, their strength would increase significantly, so Yang Ji had seized this opportunity to severely injure Yu Tingyi. Without her by his side, neither of them feared Chen Ju. As they spoke, the two of them arrived at Chen Ju's side and a fierce burst of energy erupted. Yang Ji's expression remained cold, but he didn't intervene and instead chased after Yu Tingyi, his eyes filled with murderous intent, obviously wanting to take advantage of this opportunity to kill her. Scram! Seeing that his companion was about to suffer an accident, Chen Ju flew into a rage and waved his fan-like artifact, summoning thousands of wind blades, each of which was as sharp as a knife, to create a gust of wind. Chen Ju, you're finished. Don't be so stubborn, watch your woman die with your own eyes and then be buried with her. Bai Jingchu didn't show the slightest fear as he took out a bell-shaped artifact. This artifact emitted a mysterious sound that formed a shockwave that blocked the wind blade's attack. At the same time, Bai Jingchu continued to provoke Chen Ju, causing his mind to become unstable. After a moment of delay, Yang Ji had caught up with the severely injured Yu Tingyi, grinning wickedly as he sent out a palm strike towards her head, showing no mercy. At that moment, a silver leaf-like artifact flew out from the side, rapidly expanding in size and wrapping Yu Tingyi in it. Yang Ji's palm struck the silver leaf, but it was like a stone sinking into the sea, the strength and power behind his palm didn't seem to have hit anything at all. On the contrary, the silver leaf flashed with layers of light, and the dense energy bounced back like a tide, sending Yang Ji flying back in an instant. The silver leaf wrapped around Yu Tingyi and flew straight into Dragon Phoenix Palace, disappearing from sight. Seeing this scene, Chen Ju, who was filled with worry and uneasiness, couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief, at the same time frowning slightly, wondering which powerful master had come to his rescue. Chapter 838. Sweeping the area with their divine senses, none of them found any traces of other Saint Realm masters. Just as they were feeling confused though, the silver leaf which had wrapped Yu Tingyi and flown into Dragon Phoenix Palace suddenly flew back and transformed into a silver stream of light in front of the old man and young man. The water of the Milky Way sparkled and was so clear that one could see the bottom. It emitted an unusual energy fluctuation that contained a great power. Bai Jingchu and Yang Ji of Frozen Nether Cave Heaven narrowed their eyes as they stared at the old man and young man suspiciously, quickly discovering that the cultivation of these two people who had suddenly entered the battlefield was nothing to be afraid of. The old man was a first-order transcendent and looked like he had one foot in the grave, unable to exert much strength. The young man, on the other hand, seemed to be brimming with vitality, but he was only an immortal ascension boundary 7th stage cultivator, even worse than the old man. Facing these two people, Bai Jingchu and Yang Ji really didn't put them in their eyes, but the silver stream of light in front of them was something they couldn't ignore. After all, it was this artifact that had just saved Yu Tingyi's life. Yang Ji, who had attacked Yu Tingyi, knew just how powerful this artifact was. At the very least, it was a saint-grade mid-rank artifact. That was a grade that even Yang Ji was envious of. Although there were also saint-grade artifacts in Frozen Nether Cave Heaven, there were only 2 saint-grade low-rank artifacts. Yang Ji and Bai Jingchu had to pay a huge price to obtain one each, begging others to refine them for them. In order to refine these 2 artifacts, Bai Jingchu and Yang Ji had almost emptied Frozen Nether Cave Heaven's Yuan Qi, and even now they hadn't been able to restore much of it. What was the background of this old man and young man? His cultivation was not high, yet he was able to use such a powerful artifact. This was extremely strange. Just as Bai Jingchu and Yang Ji were wondering about this, Chen Ju's eyes narrowed as he called out, "Sun Yu?" At a glance, he recognized that the young man was the disciple who had entered Dragon Valley 2 years ago, while the one next to him was obviously Ling Jian, who had been guarding the entrance to Dragon Valley. This master and disciple pair had just come out of Dragon Valley, so why had they suddenly rushed into this battlefield? Chen Ju immediately became anxious. He was already worried about Yu Tingyi's injuries, so when he saw Sun Yu appear in front of such a powerful enemy, his movements suddenly became sluggish. Bai Jingchu, who was fighting against him, reacted quickly and immediately used some exquisite means to suppress him. "Sun Yu." Yang Ji rolled his eyes and muttered to himself, "I heard that the person who entered the Dragon Valley was also called this name. Boy, was that person you? Old man, so what if it's me?" Sun Yu was not afraid. Not only did he admit it, he even scolded Yang Ji. Not only was Yang Ji not angry, but his eyes lit up and he laughed. "Haha, this is really a case of wearing out iron shoes in search of something, only to find it so easily. This old master was a little worried that those people wouldn't be able to find you, but I never thought you would deliver yourself to me. Very good, very good. You mean the 5 transcendents who went to Dragon Valley?" Sun Yu sneered softly. "How do you know?" Yang Ji's eyes narrowed, faintly feeling that something wasn't quite right. Facing a master like him, this boy was acting far too calm. Even the old first-order transcendent beside him was trembling uncontrollably, seemingly unable to bear the pressure he was exuding. "Of course I know," Sun Yu grinned meaningfully, "because they're all dead, dead by my hands." "Dead by your hands?" Yang Ji was dumbfounded, shaking his head disdainfully. "Little brat, do you think this old master will believe you just because you say so? Don't you weigh your own weight before speaking such big words? How naive. 5 transcendents, none of them weak, how could they have been killed by an immortal ascension boundary 7th stage boy?" Although the artifact in front of them was a bit strange, Yang Ji didn't believe Sun Yu had such ability. "It doesn't matter if I believe it or not, The next one is you, Sun Yu coldly snorted. You little brat. Yang Ji laughed dumbly. Don't try to provoke this old master, it won't do you any good. Although this old master won't kill you, he can still make you suffer a bit. Be a good boy and come here yourself, lest this old master has to act. The conversation here reached the ears of Chen Ju, who was fighting by Jing Chu, causing him to cough up blood in anger. Ling Jian, you old fool. Why did you bring Sun Yu here? Chen Ju had done his best and was only able to entangle by Jing Chu. Yang Ji was almost unstoppable. Now that Sun Yu had appeared in front of him, how could there be any good result? This was Dragon Phoenix Palace's last hope. Ling Jian really didn't know how to act properly. Palace Master need not worry. Ling Jian didn't answer, but Sun Yu shouted, since this disciple dared to come here today, he has full confidence in himself. Since Frozen Nether Cave Heaven dared to offend my Dragon Phoenix Palace, we must make them pay the price in blood and let them know that my Dragon Phoenix Palace is not easy to bully. Saying so, Sun Yu turned a fierce glare towards Yang Ji. Old dog, you're the first. Sun Yu was young and full of vigor, so he believed in Yang Kai, so he shouted these words quite loudly and confidently. After his voice spread out, all the cultivators who were fighting paused and turned their heads towards him. A moment later, the cultivators belonging to Frozen Nether Cave Heaven burst into laughter, their laughter mixed with contempt and mockery, causing the people from Dragon Phoenix Palace to feel ashamed. It was as if all of them felt that this little brat didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Yang Ji also laughed, crossing his arms behind his back and saying, Little brat, I'd like to see how you'll make me pay the price. This old master will stand here and not move, the two of you can attack together. Heh, those 5 transcendents just said something similar, and then, they all died. Sun Yu snickered. As soon as his words fell, a resounding dragon roar rang out and an amazing golden light burst forth, illuminating the sky. All the cultivators below the Saint Realm were instantly blinded and at the same time felt a sensational pressure descend from the sky, suppressing them so much that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly, for fear that if they made the slightest movement, they would be crushed to pieces. Facing Sun Yu, Yang Ji, who had been calm and composed a moment ago, suddenly grimaced. Amidst the dazzling golden light, Yang Kai seemed to see a huge creature rushing towards him. Not daring to hesitate, Yang Kai quickly condensed his strength to protect himself while summoning a spirit-grade mid-rank defensive artifact. If he didn't do so, he was afraid he would be killed in an instant. Hong. The earth shook violently as a violent energy wave swept out in all directions, causing the trees to sway and the wind to distort. Yang Ji let out a muffled groan as he was sent flying like a kite. At that moment, he felt as if he had been hit head-on by a huge force, causing the protective barrier in front of him to collapse and even his spirit-grade mid-rank artifact to crack. Looking down, Yang Ji saw that his artifact had indeed lost a great deal of its spirituality and would need to be repaired before it could be used again. What was that? It actually destroyed my spirit-grade mid-rank defensive artifact in a single blow. The golden light gradually stabilized and Yang Ji finally saw what had attacked him. His eyes narrowed as he stood there completely dumbfounded. Up in the air, a golden dragon several dozen meters long was looking down at him with a pair of eyes as large as copper gongs, filled with contempt and disdain. Under its gaze, Yang Ji couldn't help but feel a sense of shame. The golden dragon's appearance was flamboyant, a layer of golden scales covering its body, giving it an extremely majestic appearance, as if no attack could hurt it. Its claws were extremely sharp, flashing with a cold light, making one doubt that they were claws that could easily tear apart high-grade artifacts. Energy manifestation? Yang Ji frowned, but quickly denied his own guess. The golden dragon in front of him was too real, so real that it was impossible for it to have been condensed by Yuan Qi. In other words, it was a real giant dragon, the uncrowned king of the monster race, a legendary existence capable of reaching the 9th order. Yang Ji had once heard that the monster race had several great seniors who were peak 8th order monster beast, and 1 or 2 of them had the bloodline of a true dragon, which was why they were able to reach such heights. For the monster race, the bloodline of a true dragon was the noblest. Because of this bloodline, 1 or 2 great seniors could cultivate to the equivalent of a 3rd order saint. But in front of Yang Ji, A true dragon had appeared. This was a legendary ninth-order monster emperor, an existence that surpassed the peak of strength in this world. Feeling the scorching energy emanating from this golden dragon, Yang Ji felt a chill run down his spine. Yang Ji stood dumbfounded in place. Ling Jian, who had brought Sun Yu here, was also dumbfounded. His whole body kept shaking as he wiped his turbid eyes over and over again, as if he wanted to see more clearly and confirm that there was no illusion in front of him. Even Sun Yu's face was filled with excitement, his eyes filled with worship. The might of the Dragon Emperor. On the other side, Chen Ju couldn't help shouting as he stared blankly at the golden dragon, unable to believe that he would one day be able to witness such a scene, let alone that Sun Yu could actually accomplish such a feat 2 years ago. This disciple was still unknown, a trivial Yuan Qi boundary 7th order cultivator. Although it was confirmed that he had obtained the Dragon Emperor's inheritance, Chen Ju estimated that even if he came out safely, Dragon Phoenix Palace would have to cultivate him for a few dozen years before he could truly grow. But now, as soon as Sun Yu came out of seclusion, he directly found a Saint Realm Master to fight and even allowed the might of the Dragon Emperor to reappear. Chen Ju couldn't help laughing loudly, feeling that even if he died now, it would be a worthy death, not letting down the expectations of his ancestors. Bai Jingchu wasn't in the mood to chase after Chen Ju and instead just stood there, staring blankly at the golden dragon, shock filling the depths of his heart. All the cultivators who were fighting stopped what they were doing and watched this sensational scene. A huge panic and uneasiness quickly spread like a tide, causing all the cultivators in frozen nether cave heaven to feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Chapter 839. 30 kilometers away from Dragon Phoenix Palace, the appearance of a true dragon caused both sides to be dumbfounded. Sun Yu, who was in the midst of worshipping this true dragon, suddenly heard Yang Kai's warning in his mind and quickly composed himself before shouting towards Yang Ji, "Today, this place will be your burial ground, hand over your life." A dragon roar rang out again as the several hundred-meter-long true dragon transformed into a golden beam of light and shot towards Yang Ji. Yang Ji did not dare show any neglect, quickly summoning a long sword in his hand. This was his Saint-grade low-rank artifact, the Profound Ice Sword. As soon as this artifact was taken out, Yang Ji's aura soared, his whole body exuding an icy chill. The Profound Ice Sword also began to emit waves of icy chi, as if it was hiding some kind of profound mystery, ready to be unleashed at any moment. Before the true dragon could reach him, Yang Ji lightly shook his Profound Ice Sword and in an instant, this Saint-grade sword transformed into a myriad of sword phantoms, dazzling anyone who saw it. A cold aura burst from Yang Ji's body, like a cold wind blowing from an ancient snowy mountain, causing the temperature within a 1,000-meter radius to plummet. The Saint-grade low-rank sword bombarded the true dragon with an irresistible force. The massive golden dragon did not try to dodge and instead charged straight towards this attack. Sparks flew in all directions, and it seemed as if countless attacks had slashed onto the golden scales of the enormous dragon, causing bursts of bright sparks to sputter out. A scorching aura assaulted his face, and the might of the Profound Ice Sword was like a flower in a mirror, abruptly becoming unreal before being completely evaporated. Yang Ji's eyes narrowed as a sense of panic filled his heart. His frozen nether cave heaven mainly cultivated ice attribute secret arts and martial skills, so encountering a true dragon that contained such intense heat was like a mouse encountering a cat. It was the biggest nemesis. The power contained in the Profound Ice Sword could not even display 80% of its usual power. Yang Ji did not dare use his exquisite means at will. Under the influence of this scorching aura, the strength in his body seemed to have become somewhat unstable. The true dragon was right in front of him, opening its ferocious mouth. Yang Ji let out a strange cry, the long sword in his hand swung out, swaying a circle of light, like an ice lock flying out, enveloping the golden dragon. Yang Ji's actions were only a desperate attempt to create some time for himself to escape. Facing a ninth-order monster emperor, Yang Ji knew that he was not a match for him. The other party's prestige was too great, and if he continued to fight, he might die. In front of it, Yang Ji felt like he was walking on a tightrope, his life hanging by a thread. Unexpectedly, the rings of light blocked the gold dragon's attack. The gold dragon froze in midair, unable to break free for a while. Yang Ji frowned, faintly feeling that something was not quite right. If this golden dragon was really at the 9th level, it would have been impossible to stop it. Carefully inspecting it again, Yang Ji was surprised to find that this golden dragon was quite majestic, but it didn't seem to be so invincible. The energy fluctuations that surged out of its body were almost the same as his own, or even slightly inferior. Rolling his eyes, Yang Ji no longer hurried to escape, instead using all of his exquisite means to engage the golden dragon in a fierce battle. Seeing the Dragon Emperor's power so great, Chen Ju, who had been at an absolute disadvantage, suddenly became spirited and began fighting back, quickly recovering from his disadvantage against Bai Jingchu. The Dragon Phoenix Palace cultivator was also extremely excited, their originally dull eyes shining brightly, as if they could see a bright future for their sect. In an instant, they switched from defense to attack, forcing the invaders from frozen nether cave heaven to retreat again and again, causing them to suffer heavy casualties. Sun Yu, who was protected by the Silver River, stared at the battle in the sky with wide eyes, clenching his fists tightly as he cheered for the golden dragon in his heart. Sun Yu was also wondering why Senior Yang hadn't shown up yet. He seemed to be only using the methods of the Dragon Emperor's inheritance. With his strength, if he appeared here, he would definitely be able to beat the crap out of Yang Ji and the others. Sun Yu's vision wasn't high, so he didn't know that in terms of realm and cultivation, Yang Kai was actually just a third-order transcendent cultivator, one that had just broken through not long ago. After fighting for a while, Yang Ji suddenly burst into laughter. It turns out this big worm is only SOSO, ha ha ha. When the golden dragon first appeared, Yang Ji was really frightened. After all, the one in front of him was a legendary 9th-order monster emperor, but after fighting for so long, he finally understood the true strength of this golden dragon. It was on par with him. The only difference was that it was more durable. Yang Ji's various methods bombarded its body, but none of them were able to hurt it at all of them blocked by its golden scales. This golden dragon shouldn't have truly matured yet. Currently, it's only an early-stage 8th-order monster. Yang Ji judged in his heart, no longer panicking as before, becoming much calmer. The profound ice sword exuded a cold aura that collided with the heat radiating from the golden dragon's body, destroying each other in the process. The entire sky was filled with white fog at this moment, and while standing in the distance, one could only see flashes of light and bursts of energy, unable to see what was happening inside. Inside this fog, Yang Ji and the golden dragon collided with each other. In close contact, Yang Ji saw some human-like emotions in the two giant dragon eyes and couldn't help frowning. He felt like he wasn't fighting a monster beast, but rather a human. The golden dragon's ability to adapt was simply too fast, and as the battle progressed, Yang Ji felt more and more pressure, as if the golden dragon was rapidly growing. Those incomparably sharp dragon claws struck out, faintly bringing with them the power to tear apart space. Every time Yang Ji was frightened to the point of breaking out in cold sweat. With a cold expression, Yang Ji stabilized his state of mind, and the profound ice sword in his hand suddenly burst out with a faint light. Beside him, sharp icicles suddenly appeared, blotting out the sky as they shot towards the golden dragon. Facing such an astonishing momentum, the golden dragon opened its huge mouth, and from that mouth, a golden energy erupted like a volcano. Hong. The two violent energy fluctuations collided, each containing a completely different martial Dao concept. In the midst of the collision, a brilliant light bloomed, dazzling like fireworks, shocking everyone. The scorching energy was undoubtedly purer and more condensed, and all the icicles that came into contact with it melted in an instant, the remaining momentum bombarding Yang Ji. Yang Ji's expression was flustered, and just as he was about to dodge, a mocking voice suddenly sounded in his mind. When this voice sounded, his movements couldn't help but stop, his eyes trembling as he looked at the golden dragon not far away. By the time he wanted to dodge, it was already too late. A golden energy that was enough to incinerate everything instantly enveloped him, and Yang Ji screamed miserably, releasing a burst of cold energy from his body to counteract the scorching heat. A moment later, he flew to the side, gasping for breath. Although he didn't suffer any fatal injuries, his beard and hair were all scorched, making him look very distressed. Looking at the golden dragon, his eyes were filled with resentment. The voice that had disturbed his state of mind just now should have been transmitted by this golden dragon in front of him, causing him to be caught off guard. What he cared about was that the voice actually sounded like a human's voice, not a monster beast. "I don't care if you are the Dragon Emperor or not, since you dare hurt me, you will die today," Yang Ji roared madly, suddenly throwing out the profound ice sword in his hand. The long sword suddenly transformed into a strangely shaped demon beast in midair. It was huge, comparable to the golden dragon. Baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, it pounced on the golden dragon and bound it tightly with a biting chill. With a dragon's roar, the golden dragon flew up, but was unable to break free from the monster beast transformation of the profound ice sword. Yang Ji took advantage of the situation and rushed forward. Cold chi surged between his hands. One of his hands became crystal clear like an ice crystal, exuding a biting cold light. Like a sharp thorn, he suddenly stabbed towards the golden dragon's abdomen. Yang Ji's impregnable scales could not withstand this attack and were directly broken apart. Yang Ji's hand penetrated more than 3 inches before it was blocked by the squirming flesh. When he pulled his hand out, crimson blood mixed with golden light spurted out, splashing all over his face. "Ha ha ha." Yang Ji laughed wildly. From the beginning of the battle until now, he had finally hurt his opponent, and this gave him hope of victory. Without waiting for the golden dragon to counterattack, he quickly retreated and said with disdain, "You think your body is invincible? How naive." After these words came out, the golden dragon seemed to be completely enraged, and its huge body twisted and suddenly became much smaller. The shackles binding it were suddenly broken. Yang Ji was stunned. He had never heard of a monster beast being able to change the size of its body at will. He knew about the monster beast transformation, but the scene in front of him was just too bizarre. Without waiting for him to recover, the golden dragon, whose body had shrunk by several times, rushed towards him, its claws gleaming with a cold light and carrying an aura of death, causing Yang Ji's scalp to go numb. He found that although the golden dragon's body had shrunk, its majesty had not changed in the slightest, causing people to tremble with fear, and after shrinking, its movements were undoubtedly more convenient and faster. While flying, several golden chain-like energy suddenly shot out from the side of the golden dragon, wrapping around Yang Ji's space. At the same time, a golden spear appeared out of thin air, bringing with it the power to destroy the heavens and earth, shooting towards him. Asterisk show show show. Asterisk in the blink of an eye, it broke through the shackles of space and bombarded Yang Ji. "Impossible." Yang Ji cried out. His eyesight was not bad, so naturally he could see that whether it was the chains or the spears, they were all martial skills of a high grade. How could the monster beast display such an exquisite martial skill? While screaming, Yang Ji hurriedly avoided the spears, but was unable to get rid of the pursuit of the chains. Inadvertently brushed by one of the chains, his body suddenly became heavy, as if there was a mountain pressing down on his head, and even his divine sense showed signs of being imprisoned. Although it was only for a short moment, but in a battle between such experts, a moment of failure could affect the entire situation. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.